Chapter 695. Humph. Ziyue was not afraid. He used the magnetic slash to meet the attack silently. He opened and closed his hands, and the purple core energy in his body circulated rapidly. Chi, chi, chi. Beams of sword light suddenly shot up into the sky, turning into sword pillars that fell rapidly. At the same time, a huge shadow appeared above Ziyue's head, and he shouted 3 times in a row. In the blink of an eye, 3 blurry green lights shot towards Lu Chongqing at an extremely fast speed. As the number of battles increased, Ziyue was able to use his various skills at an extremely fast speed. He could use them in the blink of an eye. His speed was astonishing. Just as Lu Chongqing was about to make his move, he was suddenly attacked by Ziyue's 3 innate divine abilities. Even though his primordial spirit was much more stable than the Rising Cloud Patriarch's, his soul spirit defense was still shattered when the 3 innate divine abilities, absent-minded, landed. His mind was shaken, and his spiritual world almost collapsed. Then, the magnetic slash flashed and cut the scissors. Bang! The scissors were an inferior primordial spirit treasure, and were extremely powerful. However, the might of the Great Yuan magnetic slash that Ziyue used was definitely not weak. Although he was unable to completely send the scissors flying, he still caused them to fly backwards without any effect. Then, boom, boom, boom. The 5 Emperor's sky-sealing sword fell and turned into a huge sword-shaped shadow, directly sealing Lu Chongqing within it. Oh no! Lu Chongqing's primordial spirit was really stable. After the initial chaos, he quickly recovered. He stretched out his hand and thunderbolts condensed in the void. They quickly turned into beams of lightning and fell with a loud bang, hitting the sword wall. Chi-la! 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 The incomparably stable sword wall immediately became shaky, and the spiritual light dimmed to the extreme in an instant. It's really difficult to deal with. Ziyue's expression didn't change. Instead, a spirit light shot out and landed on Lu Chongqing's body. His opponent's speed was indeed very fast, but within the range of the 5 Emperor's heaven-sealing sword, no matter how he dodged, he could not escape Ziyue's great forbidden spirit technique. As the spiritual light fell, the spiritual light on Lu Chongqing's body immediately dissipated. The power of the primordial spirit in his body was firmly locked in his primordial spirit, unable to move at all. Immediately, the 30 kilometers long bolt of lightning swiftly dispersed because it was no longer maintained by his control and the energy of his soul. The sword wall, which was on the verge of collapse, quickly stabilized. Then, Ziyue attacked again. The void froze for a moment before distorting and collapsing. Then, a dazzling divine light shot out like a waterfall. No, Lu Chongqing, who had just broken free from the seal of the Great Forbidden Spirit technique, had an unprecedented fear in his eyes. But in the next moment, the divine light rushed over. It was as if the might of the heavens had descended and quickly crushed his body. Boom! Blood spurted out and his primordial spirit collapsed. A large number of treasures scattered in all directions because of the destruction of his storage pouch. Then, they were quickly crushed into powder by the divine light. In the void, a wave of distorted essence immediately rose. That was the essence emitted by countless spirit stones and treasures after they had been destroyed to the extreme. But it quickly dissipated with the wind. At this time, the person in charge of this branch of the Holy Ji Palace, Lu Chongqing, who was at the peak of the early primordial spirit realm and whose strength reached the first tier of the early primordial spirit realm, had completely died at the hands of Ziyue. Even at the moment of his death, his eyes were still filled with disbelief and despair. It was as if he had never expected Ziyue to be so powerful. He was so powerful that he could kill a primordial spirit realm cultivator and flatten a branch of the Dao Palace. What? Ancestor Chongqing is dead? He died at the hands of the North Nether King? The remaining disciples of the Dao Palace instantly turned pale. The shock in their hearts squeezed and squeezed them until their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. All of them were terrified to the extreme. Ancestor Chongqing's strength must be extremely powerful. He could be considered a powerhouse even at the early stage primordial spirit realm. But even so, he was still no match for Taoist North Nether and was killed. From this, it can be seen how terrifying his strength was. Was he at the mid-stage primordial spirit realm? Or was he even stronger? Compared to him, the self-proclaimed genius who was confident that he was not weaker than anyone at the same level, how insignificant was he? Arrogant? Zhou Xiao, who had just used the super long-distance assistance array to call for help from the Tao Palace headquarters, turned pale with fright. He made a prompt decision and quickly began to flee. He knew that with Ziyue's strength, no one at the Golden Core realm would be able to suppress him. Only primordial spirit realm cultivators. And they had to be at the late stage of the primordial spirit realm. He had to report this information to the headquarters as soon as possible. Otherwise, the 9-star Tao Palace that he was in would definitely suffer great losses. Moreover, it was very likely that he would die here. Run! Run! At this time, the others were also alerted. Like swallows, they fled in all directions. However, no matter how fast they were, how could they be faster than Ziyue's lightning-like escape light? The power of the pure purple elixir essence surged. Immediately, dazzling streaks of lightning shot out from his body. Then, like a cannonball that tore through the void, he was like a roaring gale that swept through the void. With just a flash, he crushed the void, leaving behind a long streak of lightning that stirred up the heavens and earth. And his speed was pushed to the extreme by the lightning. No matter who it was, no one could escape from his pursuit light. In just a few moments, he had caught up to the disciples and killed them one by one. Are they all dead? No, there's still one more? Ziyue sensed the battlefield and spread his consciousness. However, this was a branch of the Tao Palace after all. Under the power of the array, many places had the effect of blocking out consciousness. However, Ziyue clearly remembered that there had been a mid-Aurus core realm cultivator by Lu Chongqing's side. Although that cultivator's face was ordinary, his arrogance and the reverence in the eyes of the surrounding cultivators left a deep impression on him. Not to mention, when he had used the soul-searching technique on the flood dragon, he had also seen the image of this cultivator. It was the super genius of this branch of the Tao Palace, Zhou Xiao. His figure moved and he hurriedly turned into a streak of light, beginning to investigate the entire branch. None of the barriers or spirit designs could withstand a casual blow from him. They were all shattered by him. Then, with a sweep of his consciousness, he investigated each area clearly. Treasury, Hall of Heritage, Hall of Martial Arts, Hall of Communication. Ziyue searched everywhere. Suddenly, his gaze shifted to a large hall. The teleportation hall. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and a magnetic slash swept out. Immediately after, his intrinsic flying sword evolved into a sword to break all techniques and quickly stabbed out. No, Zhou Xiao had just killed a disciple who was about to be teleported away. He hurriedly stepped onto the teleportation array and activated it with all his might. A look of despair flashed across his face. Chapter 696. Any teleportation formation, even if it had sufficient energy, needed time to activate. This time was not long, only 3 breaths of time. But at this moment, 3 breaths of time seemed like an eternity to him. Boom! The great primordial magnet slashed through everything, quickly shattering the protective formation above the teleportation hall. The entire hall was cut in half, revealing Zhou Xiao, who was activating the teleportation formation with all his might and preparing to escape. From afar, Ziyue could see the madness on his face and the despair in his eyes. Then, the flying sword flashed and sliced through the air. Poof! No matter how he tried to block or how he tried, he could not stop Ziyue's sword. It pierced through his defenses and landed on his head, piercing it completely. Then, because the teleportation formation was not continuously activated, its energy was not enough to pierce through the void and reach the other side. It gradually dimmed and quieted down. I wonder what the situation inside is like. Outside Mirror Lake, Su Zhong looked at his senior brother with a nervous expression. This time, he was too impulsive. No one could have imagined that Taoist Dark North would be so crazy. He decided to go to the Mirror Lake branch of the 9-star Dao Palace alone and fight the many experts there. Especially one of them, Lu Chongqing, who was at the initial stage of the Primordial Soul Realm. Before Lu Chongqing broke through to the Primordial Soul Realm 1,000 years ago, he had a record of fighting against Emperor-level experts without losing. After breaking through to the Primordial Soul Realm, even if he did not have the combat strength of an early-stage Primordial Soul Realm expert like Emperor-level experts, he was definitely not weak. After 1,000 years, he is probably not far from the middle stage of the Primordial Soul Realm. Coupled with the support of the formation here, even a middle-stage Primordial Soul Realm cultivator would find it difficult to escape unscathed. Although Senior Dark North has a record of killing Primordial Soul Realm cultivators, the outcome this time is still very unpredictable. Lu Yudao shook his head. He put away the frivolous look on his face and said seriously, which was a rare sight. No matter what, we have alerted the enemy this time. Su Zhong sighed. It would not be easy for Azure Mystic Mountain to find such a secret branch of the 9-star Dao Palace. If they failed this time, the 9-star Dao Palace would assuredly move this secret ground away. Even if they didn't move, they would set up even stronger defenses or even traps to guard against powerful enemies. There's no need to worry about that. Since I've already made my move, I naturally won't let the 9-star Dao Palace's Mirror Lake branch get by peacefully. Before Taoist Dark North entered, I notified Uncle Master Su Xian. Given Uncle Master's speed, it shouldn't take long for him to arrive here. He could only hope that Taoist Dark North would be able to hold on for a bit longer. Don't die prematurely in the Mirror Lake branch, Lu Yudao said with a solemn expression. Should we make a move in advance? Su Zhong's heart trembled. Not necessarily. The 9-star Dao Palace was not to be trifled with. However, they had been so aggressive in the True Law domain, causing many of their senior and junior brothers to suffer heavy casualties. They had no choice but to hide in the dark. They had to be warned. Let them know that our Qingxian mountain is not to be trifled with. As Lu Yudao spoke, his eyes suddenly lit up as he looked into the distance, revealing a look of pleasant surprise. Eldest martial uncle is here. It's over. Although I don't know if anyone managed to escape, it went very smoothly this time. Ziua looked at the teleportation formation. With a flash of his sword, he sliced open a corner of it. Instantly, the teleportation formation was destroyed by him. He also took advantage of the situation to prevent other experts from arriving through the teleportation formation. As for whether or not someone had really left through the teleportation formation, he didn't really care. This was because he knew that the Mirror Lake branch would definitely have a communication formation with the outside world. The news of his surprise attack could not be hidden from the 9-star Dao Palace. It made no difference whether they knew or not. However, through this battle, I've confirmed my strength. I should be at the peak of the early primordial spirit realm, which is the first tier of the early primordial spirit realm. Ziua thought of the 3 primordial spirit realm cultivators who had died at his hand. They were all at the early primordial spirit realm. However, there was a very clear division in their strength. Among them, Patriarch Bitterchalice was the weakest, followed by the Rising Cloud Patriarch. The strongest was naturally Lu Chongqing, who had died at his hands this time. It almost corresponded to his own division of the early primordial spirit realm, which was the 3rd tier, the 2nd tier, and the 1st tier of the early primordial spirit realm. The reason why Bai Ziue was able to kill the rising cloud great ancestor was not because he was already above the first class of the early stage of the primordial spirit realm. It was just that he had a shocking combat strength that could surpass the level of his strength. It was a perfected Tao technique, the primordial magnetic divine light. With the help of this Tao technique, he could naturally unleash an offensive effect that far exceeded his original strength. Next, Ziue swept his gaze across the many halls and suddenly waved his hand. Rumble! The void trembled, and a huge spatial hole immediately appeared in front of him. Following it, one cultivator after another rushed out of the cave and landed on the place. They were the cultivators that Ziue had recruited in the cloud-piercing mountain range when he founded the Dark North sect. Leading them was the former city lord of Cloud-Piercing City and the current vice-sect leader of the Dark North sect, True Lord Bai. In addition to True Lord Bai, True Lord Zhuge, True Lord Su, True Lord Qiuyuepiao, and the others were also present. It could be said that Ziue had recruited most of the cultivators above the aperture opening realm in the Dark North Grotto Heaven. Sect Leader. Greetings, Sect Leader. After the initial panic, everyone quickly calmed down and looked at Ziue with respect and admiration. Some of the smarter ones scanned their surroundings, and their pupils quickly shrank. Where was this? The scale of the buildings, the environment, and the spirit chi environment were superior to that of many immortal cultivation sections. Wait a minute? Tao Palace? A branch of the Tao Palace? Could this be the legendary core secret place of the 9-star Tao Palace, a branch of the Tao Palace? Looking at the traces of the battle around them and the fallen cultivators on the ground, could it be? The faces of the group of disciples were filled with shock. Could the sect leader really have come here alone to flatten a secret branch of the 9-star Tao Palace? How could this be? The 9-star Tao Palace was one of the top superpowers in the world and ranked among the top 3 in the entire astral boundary. Even a branch would have at least one primordial spirit expert overseeing it. But it had been flattened? In particular, True Lord Bai and the others who had some understanding of this were extremely shocked. Could their sect leader already have the strength to contend with or even kill a primordial spirit expert? Chapter 697. Ziue naturally wouldn't explain anything. He simply instructed, "Go and collect the spoils of war." This was one of the reasons why he had summoned so many disciples from the Grotto Heaven. The Mirror Lake Tao Palace was extremely large. If he was alone, he would naturally overlook some things and spend a lot of time. After all, this was a branch of the 9-star Tao Palace. The longer he stayed, the more dangerous it would be. Moreover, many of the treasures were nothing to him at his level of strength, but to the other disciples, they were extremely valuable. He believed that his North Nether Sect's disciples would definitely loot this branch of the North Nether Sect completely. Yes, Sect Master. The group of disciples couldn't wait any longer. When they heard the order, they respectfully bowed and immediately rushed to the various halls. The Treasure Hall, the Inheritance Hall, the Communication Hall. No matter where they were, the disciples of Dark North Sect could be seen everywhere. Regardless of the treasures, even the pillars, carvings, and jade flooring of the Great Hall. Anything that was valuable in the eyes of cultivators was taken away by them one by one. They would either throw them into storage bags or take them apart and pile them together. There were even cultivators heading toward the spirit vein below the main hall. The spirit vein wasn't of a low grade. Although it wasn't grade 5, it was at least an advanced grade 4 spirit vein. It was much more superior than the beginner grade 4 spirit vein in the Dark North Grotto Heaven. Once the core of the spirit vein was collected, the spirit vein in the Grotto Heaven would definitely be upgraded. This was what made the cultivators the most excited. Of course, the spirit stones in the spirit vein also made the eyes of countless disciples shine. Sect Master. True Lord Bai came forward to greet him, excitement mixed with obvious nervousness. He asked in a low voice, This seems to be a branch of the 9-star Tao Palace. How did you come to be with the 9-star Tao Palace? Ziyue was about to reply when his gaze suddenly turned to the square where he had originally appeared. In that square there was also a teleportation array. That teleportation array was connected to the Mirror Lake Tao Palace branch. At this moment, the teleportation array suddenly lit up, startling Ziyue. Then, he saw Lu Yudao, Su Zhong, and an unfamiliar middle-aged Taoist appear in the teleportation array. Lu Yudao and the others, who had been on high alert and ready to make a move at any time, were shocked when they saw the scene before them. Then, they saw Ziyue standing not too far away, looking at them warily. To be more precise, he was looking at eldest Uncle Su Xian, who was standing in the middle of them. They immediately relaxed. Then, he was incomparably shocked. The 9-star Tao Palace's Mirror Lake branch was flattened just like that. Even Lu Changqing, who is at the peak of the early primordial spirit realm, is dead. They were all killed by Taoist Dark North by himself? As for the group of North Nether sect disciples, they could tell at a glance that most of them were only at the God realm or even the Aperture Awakening realm. There were very few Golden Core realm cultivators, so it was impossible for them to play a big role in such an intense battlefield. Not to mention, how astonishing were their perception and vision. Naturally, they could also tell that among this group of cultivators, even the strongest, true Lord Bai, did not show any signs of spiritual qi being scattered after a fierce battle. Clearly, he had not participated in the previous battle. You are the Taoist Dark North, the Taoist Dark North who is widely rumored to have defeated 2 titled kings and caused one of the 9 Extinction Sword King and the other Dream Immortal King to flee? You are indeed extraordinary. This time, you destroyed the Mirror Lake branch of the 9-star Tao Palace with your own strength. When I heard the message from the Taoist, I was a little angry and thought that he was fooling around. Now it seems that I was overthinking things. You are indeed very good. Taoist Su Xian looked at Ziyue with a face full of praise, his eyes full of admiration. Who is he? Ziyue looked at Lu Yudao, a trace of vigilance in his eyes. Pressure. Ziyue felt a strong sense of threat and pressure from this middle-aged Taoist. This was because this middle-aged Taoist was at the primordial spirit realm. Moreover, his strength had reached the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm. Therefore, even though Ziyue had just experienced a great battle and was extremely confident in his own strength, he did not dare to relax in the slightest. The purple core essence in his body vibrated slightly, causing the Dark North flying sword in his body to vibrate as well, as if it was ready to strike at any time. Senior Dark North, don't misunderstand. This is an elder of Mount Qingxian and also our eldest senior uncle, Taoist Su Xian. I was worried that you would be in danger this time, so I took the initiative to invite eldest senior uncle here. Now it seems that my actions were superfluous. However, senior's strength is indeed worthy of our admiration. We thought that going against the odds to slay immortals only existed in legends, but we did not expect you to succeed. According to my eldest senior uncle, Lu Changqing's strength is definitely not weak. He is considered an expert in the early stage primordial spirit realm. Coupled with the great formation here, even my eldest senior uncle had to put in some effort. Who would have thought that he would still be unable to escape your attack? Seeing this, Lu Yudao hurriedly stepped forward and explained. Is that so? Ziyue nodded slightly and retracted his aura. However, in his heart, he naturally did not believe all of his nonsense. The sect master is respectfully called the Dark North Lord? Furthermore, he fought against 2 kings and killed the Ju Sword King and the Dream Immortal King? He even killed an primordial spirit realm true cultivator? Even a mid-stage primordial spirit realm expert praised him? Perfected Lord Bai, who had been standing respectfully at the side, could not help but widen his eyes when he heard this. He was almost dizzy from the impact of their conversation. The news that they revealed in just a few sentences was simply too shocking. This was simply too shocking. If someone else had said this, he would not have paid any attention or believed it at all. However, the person who said this was a true cultivator who had reached the mid-stage primordial spirit realm, so he had no choice but to believe it. There was no room for doubt. Even so, he still found it hard to believe. After all, as far as he knew, the sect master had just broken through to the golden core realm. Previously, when he heard that the sect master had broken through to the mid-stage golden core realm, he was already shocked. When he heard about the sect master's battle achievements, he was really speechless. Jiuju Sword King? The Dream Immortal King? That was a peerless golden core realm expert, but they were no match for the sect master? Furthermore, the sect master was respectfully called the Dark North Lord? What had happened in the outside world in just a few short months? Furthermore, he had killed an primordial spirit realm true cultivator? Was this also true? However, no matter how unbelievable it was, he knew that a secret place like the 9-star Dao Palace branch would definitely have an primordial spirit realm expert guarding it. Now that this place had been destroyed, who else could it be but the sect master? Chapter 698. Daoist Biming. Although I know that you do not want to be tied down, I still think that joining Mount Qingxian is a good choice. It will also allow you to improve your cultivation level even more rapidly. For example, you are only at the mid-Orus elixir realm. Although you are not weak, the difference in cultivation level is not so easy to make up for. Once you are hunted down by the mid-Orus essence soul stage cultivators of the 9-star Dao Palace, you will be in great danger. But if you join Mount Qingxian, things will be different. On Mount Qingxian, there is a rare treasure called the geocentric marrow liquid that can quickly improve your cultivation level and cultivation level. Just one drop can save you 10 days to half a month of cultivation. As long as there is enough geocentric marrow liquid, it will not be a problem for you to reach the late Orus elixir realm in 3 months and the pinnacle of the Orus elixir realm in a year. If you are willing, I can guarantee that you can freely use the geocentric marrow liquid and reach the pinnacle of the Orus elixir realm. In addition, you can choose any of the best techniques in the world such as the Qingxian True Classic, 9 Lives Mystic Immortal Record, 10,000 Transformations Scripture, and others that can reach the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm. Dao technique inheritance will not be a problem. Xiue's performance in this battle seemed to have completely moved Daoist Xushuan, and he quickly extended his invitation. He knew that Xiue had rejected the offers of Lu Yu Dao and the others. But with his status, the benefits and promises that he could offer were naturally more important, and he was full of confidence. Geocentric marrow liquid? And it is freely available? The Qingxian True Canon, the 9 Lives Mysterious Immortal Records, and the Wanhua True Canon, these 3 legacies can be chosen freely? Lu Yu Dao and Su Zhong, who were standing at the side, were so envious that their eyes turned red. The value of the geocentric marrow liquid was needless to say. It was a rare treasure that could directly save a cultivator hundreds or thousands of years of cultivation. Even Mount Qingxian did not have many reserves of it. Usually, only cultivators with great contributions or super geniuses with great potential were qualified to exchange for it. As for techniques such as the Qingxian True Classic, they were even more precious. A cultivation technique that allowed one to reach the pinnacle of the primordial soul realm not only included the cultivation method, but also the accompanying Dao technique inheritance, especially the Qingxian True Canon. It had a special meaning to Mount Qingxian. The future master of Mount Qingxian would definitely be someone who had cultivated the Qingxian True Canon. It could be said that once Xiue joined Mount Qingxian and chose to cultivate the Qingxian True Canon, it meant that he had the potential to lead the entire Mount Qingxian and become the Mountain Lord of Mount Qingxian. However, when they thought of Ziyue's battle record and his ability to defeat immortals, they immediately felt that it was reasonable. It was very normal for such a super genius, an existence that was invincible among his peers, to receive such treatment. No superpower would dare to underestimate such a person. "Thank you, Elder Su Xian." Ziyue first bowed and then faintly refused. "It's just that I've already made up my mind. I don't want to join any forces in the short term, so I can only choose to disappoint Senior's good intentions. Moreover, I feel that the way we are working together now is more appropriate. I need your channels in exchange for information, secret techniques, and treasures, and you want to use me to deal with the 9 stars of the Tao Palace and eliminate dissidents. We're just taking what we need." Also, although fellow Taoist Judeo's actions this time were done with good intentions, which cultivator of our generation hasn't been cautious and constantly on guard against schemes and schemes? Therefore, if you are still willing to work together next time, I hope that you won't meet each other face to face. Otherwise, on the battlefield, it's difficult to distinguish friend from foe, and there may be accidental injuries. If someone is injured, or if some of you die because of this, it won't look good on both sides. As he spoke, Ziyue's tone carried a hint of warning, and he actually sounded a little aggressive. This, Dark North, Lu Yudao and Su Zhong's expressions changed, and they were somewhat in disbelief. How dare he? How dare he speak to them like this, especially when there was Taoist Su Xian, who had reached the mid-stage of the primordial soul realm. Where did this Taoist Dark North's confidence come from? Even the vice-sect master of the Dark North sect, perfected Lord Bai, felt his heart skip a beat, and he became extremely nervous. Mount Qingxian? The other party was from Mount Qingxian? As a veteran Golden Elixir realm cultivator, he naturally had a certain understanding of this force. Although there were few rumors in the outside world due to the suppression of the 9 stars of the Tao Palace, it was still one of the top 10 superforces, and there were countless primordial soul realm cultivators. The sect master's words were indeed a little impolite. He was afraid that the other party would be angered and attack them. One must know that the other party had a mid-stage primordial soul realm cultivator present, and it was enough to crush them. On the other hand, Ziyue looked indifferent. He naturally had confidence in his heart. The great battle had caused the number of his spiritual energy to soar again. It had now reached more than 650 million spiritual energy points. 600 million spiritual energy points were enough to raise his strength to the late stage of the Golden Elixir realm, and his combat strength to the mid-stage of the primordial soul realm. If he really wanted to fight, he would not have the slightest fear. "It's fine." Taoist Su Xian waved his hand and said with a smile, "Taoist Bei Ming's words make a lot of sense. Now that our cooperation has just begun, it is normal for us to be wary of each other. How about this? I have a Mount Qingxian token here, and it is a communication item between Mount Qingxian and the upper echelons of some sections. Some information transmission, and even small items transmission, can be done with the help of this Mount Qingxian token. Other than when the treasure is being transmitted, this Mount Qingxian token will automatically determine your location. At other times, it will not have any reaction. Of course, if you feel that it is not careful, you can also place it in your Heavenly Abode magic treasure. The Heavenly Abode magic treasure can isolate space, and naturally, it can isolate its location. Saying this, he flipped his hand and handed over a green badge that seemed to be only an inch long to Qin Nan. "Thank you, Elder Su Xian." Ziyue's eyes moved, and he thanked him before taking it from behind. When he touched it, it was heavy. He immediately sensed that this token was not simple. It was a small piece, but it contained a lot of materials and went through a lot of refining methods. It seemed heavy and very delicate. This Mount Qingxian token is just a small way of transmitting information. It contains the magic of transmitting items, and that is the most precious part. Even if we are thousands of miles away, we can use this Mount Qingxian token to transmit what you need. In the entire astral realm, only the Mount Qingxian tokens of Mount Qingxian have such magic. It is unique. Su Zhong hurriedly explained when he saw this. Chapter 699. We don't have many of these tokens in the entire Mount Qingxian. There are less than 100 of them, and many of them have been lost without a trace. The effort and price required to refine each token is no less than that of a supreme Aurus core treasure. It is extremely precious. Only someone like our eldest uncle Su Xian, who is at the primordial soul realm and above, is qualified to give out the Mount Qingxian token, and each person only has one chance. For senior to receive this Qingxian mountain token from eldest martial uncle, it can be seen how much eldest martial uncle values you. Lu Yudao followed suit and said, "Thank you for your kindness, elder Su Xian." Ziyue glanced at Taoist Su Xian with a look of gratitude. "As you said, we each took what we needed. I only hope that you will be careful in the future. I don't want the Mount Qingxian token I gave out to go missing or fall into the hands of enemy cultivators." Taoist Su Xian smiled and said, "Don't worry." Ziyue cupped his hands. "If that's the case, we'll meet again." Taoist Su Xian nodded. Then, as if he had thought of something, he looked around at the numerous Dark North sect disciples who were rapidly dismantling the hall. His face twitched for a moment before he said, "This place is after all one of the secret grounds of the Nine-Star Tao Palace. Now that it has been destroyed, the Nine-Star Tao Palace will definitely send experts to investigate. Even if the teleportation formation here has been destroyed, I estimate that it will take at most an hour for someone to arrive. Based on my understanding of the Nine-Star Tao Palace, even if it is not the late primordial soul realm Taoist Bitterzen, it will definitely be the mid-primordial soul realm Taoist Wang Xuezhi, who has the battle record of defeating 3 true cultivators of the same level. Therefore, I advise you to leave as soon as possible. The late primordial soul realm Taoist Bitterzen and the mid-primordial soul realm Taoist Wang Xuezhi." Ziyue's heart trembled as he nodded. "Thank you for your reminder, elder. I will be careful." After Taoist Su Xian and the others left, Ziyue did not dare to hesitate. He immediately helped the disciples move the treasures into his northern underworld paradise. The destructive power of celestial method cultivators was already astonishing. Now that the entire North Nether sect had been mobilized, and there was no lack of gods and golden core realm experts among them, the efficiency of this operation was naturally very remarkable. In just half an hour, all the treasures and materials in the Mirror Lake secret realm had been emptied. Even the high-grade 4 spiritual vein in the secret realm was being emptied out. Not only had the core of the spirit vein been taken away, but the many main and branch spirit veins within the spirit vein, as well as the vast amount of spirit stones stored within them, had also been emptied. In this way, even if the spiritual vein did not completely wither away and become a dead vein, its grade would inevitably drop drastically. It was already very difficult to maintain a grade 2 spiritual vein. Sect Master, True Monarch Bai, and the others quickly looked at Ziyue. "Everyone, enter the Grotto Heaven. We'll talk about the inventory later." Bai Ziyue did not hesitate and immediately opened the northern underworld Grotto Heaven. Immediately, the North Nether sect cultivators turned into streaks of flowing light and rushed into the Grotto Heaven. At the same time, a large number of treasures, materials, building materials, and a sea of rare treasures were all collected into the northern underworld Grotto Heaven like a rain of spirit. After all the disciples and treasures had been collected, Ziyue once again looked at the devastated Mirror Lake secret realm. Then, he turned around, randomly chose a place, and turned into a streak of flowing light and rushed over. The headquarters of the Nine-Star Tao Palace, where the real Tao Palace was located. It was a huge spiritual mountain that was tens of thousands of feet tall and stretched for thousands of miles around it. It was incomparably majestic. Inside, huge peaks stood in great numbers, and the spiritual qi was unbelievably abundant. Among the countless huge peaks, there was a huge peak. It was not the highest peak, and it even seemed a little short. However, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth here was the densest on that huge spiritual mountain. It was so dense that it seemed like it would turn into immortal qi, causing all living things to grow and flourish here. Rare flowers and herbs could be seen everywhere. Second, third, and fourth grade spiritual materials could be seen almost everywhere. Even fifth grade spiritual materials were not considered rare here. It was truly a place of good fortune. There was a palace at the top of this short mountain. It was not very large and appeared unremarkable in the midst of the short mountain. However, it was within this unremarkable palace that all of the important cultivators of the 9 Stars Tao Palace had appeared at the same time. Even if they were separated by thousands of miles or tens of thousands of miles, there was bound to be a Yuan spirit projection that would descend here. There were more than 30 figures in total, almost filling up the small palace. All of a sudden, a cultivator who seemed old yet appeared young upon closer inspection suddenly appeared and stood at the top of the hall. The cultivator's true age could not be discerned from his illusory appearance. Palace Lord. When the others saw this, they were all shocked. Then, they bowed respectfully. It is rare for the Tao Palace's spiritual bell to ring 3 times. May I know why the Palace Lord has summoned us? Someone quickly asked after the group took their seat. That's right. I had entered the cultivation palace to cultivate in seclusion, but I was awakened by the spiritual bell and had no choice but to rush over. Soon, a cultivator echoed. However, there were also cultivators who revealed solemn expressions. It was obvious that they had some understanding of the situation. This is indeed a major event for the 9-star Tao Palace. The 9-star Tao Palace Lord swept a glance over all the cultivators and said in a low voice, I just received news that one of the 9-star Tao Palace's branches, the Mirror Lake Mystic Ground, has been flattened. Aside from one person who managed to escape using the teleportation array, all of the cultivators, including Elder Evergreen, were slaughtered. Not a single one survived. What? How is that possible? The group of Yuan Spirit Realm cultivators turned pale with fright. Not to mention that the Mirror Lake Mystic Ground is extremely secretive. Among all of us here, only the Palace Lord and a few others know its exact location. However, the defensive measures of the Mystic Ground and Elder Chong Qing's own strength are not things that ordinary people can break through. A white-haired old man could not help but say, one has to be at least at the mid-stage of the Yuan Spirit Realm. Who is the attacker? Has Mount Azure Mystic begun their counterattack? Not at all. The attacker's cultivation level is not high. He is only at the mid-stage of the Golden Elixir Realm. At this moment, a person dressed in a long Confucian robe suddenly stood up and spoke. This person was none other than Wang Xuezhi, a primordial soul-true cultivator known as the Confucian God. He had started cultivating immortality midway through his life as a mortal Confucian scholar and ascended to the mid-stage primordial soul realm. Mid-stage golden elixir realm? Who is it? Someone could not help but ask. Could it be Taoist Dark North? Wang Xuezhi said in a low voice. Chapter 700. Taoist North Ming? Most people were confused. This was a title that the many lofty experts of the 9-star Tao Palace were unfamiliar with. After all, Ziyue's rise was too short. It had only been a year. The few people who had heard of Taoist North Ming's name, especially an old man named Patriarch Qian Tong, trembled and revealed a look of shock. He had a deep impression of this name. Taoist Qian Yuan was the most outstanding of the Qian family's younger generation. He was also the only one who had reached the Golden Core stage with a third-grade Golden Core. He had high hopes of breaking through to the nascent Soul stage. He had placed him in the 9-star Tao Palace branch in the cloud-piercing mountain range. Apart from his own mistakes, He had also been sent out to train and accumulate strength. But he had never imagined that there would be someone who could, and even dared to, attack his younger generation in the cloud-piercing mountain range, where there wasn't even a single nascent soul cultivator. That was why he was so angry that he had set up a bounty to kill him. However, according to what he knew, although Taoist Northming had extraordinary potential and had killed a golden core cultivator when he was at the god stage, it had only been a few months. No matter how amazing he was and how he had broken through to the golden core stage in such a short time, it was impossible for him to have the strength to kill a nascent soul cultivator and break through the Mirror Lake secret realm. Are you sure he is only at the golden core stage? Patriarch Qian Tong couldn't help but ask. Yes. I personally rushed to the Mirror Lake secret realm after the incident. It was already a mess inside. Although it was difficult to see the trajectory of their battle with the Shadowlight, Taoist Northming had indeed displayed strength that far exceeded the Golden Core stage. He had broken through the Secret Realm's formation and killed Taoist Evergreen and the many disciples in the Mirror Lake Secret Realm. Among them was the genius disciple Zhou Xiao, who everyone had high hopes for and had a chance of becoming a nascent soul cultivator. Wang Xuezhi nodded and said solemnly, "Also, when I used the Shadowlight, I discovered an abnormal fluctuation. Clearly, someone had deliberately concealed it. I suspect that this is one of the reasons why Taoist Northming was able to find the Mirror Lake secret realm so accurately. If I'm not wrong, it should be our old rival, the Azure Mystic Mountain." These rats! Everyone's hearts sank as they felt a headache coming on. If it was just Taoist Dark North by himself, they wouldn't care too much about him, no matter how powerful he was. In the tens of thousands of years that the 9-star Tao Palace had existed, they had encountered countless geniuses and many powerful enemies, but very few of them had been able to pose a threat to them. Only Qing Xian Mountain. They weren't any weaker than the 9-star Tao Palace, and had been a great threat to them 10,000 years ago. If not for the fact that the current palace lord was strong enough to severely injure the mountain master of Mount Qingxian, the outcome would have been unpredictable. Another thing worth mentioning is that according to what we know, the fall of fellow Taoist Ascending Cloud and the true devil sex Old Devil Chui is also greatly related to this Taoist Bei Ming. From the looks of it, the news of him killing 2 primordial spirit realm true cultivators is very likely true. Could it be that this Taoist Northming is actually from Mount Qingxian? It doesn't look like it. Such a genius could already slay a golden core cultivator when he was at the God realm. Now that he's only at the middle golden core realm, he has the battle prowess to slay a primordial spirit realm true cultivator. There's no doubt that when he breaks through to the golden core realm, he will condense that 1 in a billion pure violet golden core. Based on my understanding of Mount Qingxian, if there really is such a talented junior, they would never allow him to come out and fight against us when he's only at the middle golden core realm. That's true. But there's no doubt that this Taoist Northming is a great threat to the 9-star Tao Palace. He must be eradicated as soon as possible. The many experts of the 9-star Tao Palace were able to deduce countless possibilities with just a little bit of information. Thus, they quickly reached a consensus and turned their gazes to the palace lord of the 9-star Tao Palace, whose age couldn't be determined. In that case, Elder Wang, I'll leave Taoist Northming to you. The palace master of the 9-star Tao Palace turned his gaze to Wang Xuezhi. No problem. However, this matter is ultimately related to the Qian family, so I need the Qian family's 3,000 Taoist puppets and a god-slaying arrow. The Confucian god, Wang Xuezhi, nodded and made his request. Elder Wang, isn't this request a little too much? Patriarch Qian Tong's expression changed. The Taoist puppets were the secret treasures of the Qian family. Even if they couldn't defeat a golden core cultivator, they were still much stronger than the average peak divine realm cultivator. There were thousands of them, enough to pose a threat to any golden core cultivator. If the 3,000 Taoist puppets were to form a formation, even a primordial soul cultivator would have a headache and risk death. They were extremely precious, not to mention the god-slaying arrow. It was a secret arrow that specialized in killing primordial soul cultivators. A single god-slaying arrow was comparable to a full-strength attack from a middle primordial soul cultivator. It was a great threat to an early primordial soul cultivator. Even the Qian family didn't have many, only 2 left. He hadn't expected an unexpected calamity to befall him. Wang Shuji had bitten his heart the moment he opened his mouth. Agreed. However, no matter how much he objected, the palace lord's final decision made him lose the courage to resist. After all, the reason he'd offended Taoist Dark North this time was because of the Qian family. Because of this, 2 primordial soul cultivators of the 9-star Dao Palace had perished and a secret place had been destroyed. It was already good enough that the palace lord didn't settle the score with him. Although the 2 treasures pained him, he didn't dare complain since the palace lord had agreed. He could only obediently offer up the treasures. The Azure Mystic Mountain Medallion that Taoist Xianxian gave me is indeed mysterious and precious. This is especially true for the teleportation formation. It's truly an eye-opener. Several days later, in a barren mountain, Ziyue looked at the storage pouches that had appeared beside him. His eyes couldn't help but sparkle. Previously, Ziyue had discussed cooperation with Lu Yudao and the others. In addition to providing information about his enemies, he'd also requested a trade. After all, although he was free to act alone, it was extremely difficult for him to obtain many rare treasures by himself. For example, he'd previously obtained the 9 Extinction Divine Sword, the Celestial Spirit Sex Dao Technique Inheritance. There was no need to say much about the peerless power of this 9 Extinction Divine Sword. However, the difficulty of cultivating it was also well known. The materials needed to cultivate this Dao technique were not only extremely precious, but most of them were unique to the Celestial Spirit Sect. With his current relationship with the Celestial Spirit Sect, it was naturally extremely difficult for him to obtain these materials normally. Therefore, he thought of borrowing the power of the Azure Mystic Mountain. Chapter 701. After all, Qing Xian Mountain was one of the top 10 superpowers in the astral world. There were countless experts, and they had a rich collection of resources. Qing Xian Mountain naturally had the means to obtain treasures that were difficult for others to obtain, such as materials that were unique to Celestial Spirit Sect. Previously, he was still thinking about how to obtain the items that he needed smoothly and safely. He did not expect that with the help of the small Qing Xian Mountain token and the teleportation formation within, he could teleport to a place that he thought was safe without having to agree on the location of the transaction or take the risk of meeting the other party. After keeping the 3 storage bags, Ziyue immediately took the Qing Xian Mountain token and sent them into the North Underworld Grotto Heaven. After that, he did not linger on the mountain. His figure disappeared without a sound and he quickly left the place. He was a cautious person. After obtaining the items that he needed with the help of the Qing Xian Mountain token, he naturally would not stay on the same spot. After half an hour, Ziyue appeared in another barren mountain cave. Then, he moved his body and entered the North Underworld Grotto Heaven. In the outside world, the North Underworld Grotto Heaven turned into an ordinary stone bead. It was slightly hidden and buried in the mud. As long as it was not a cultivator of the Golden Elixir realm or above using their consciousness, it was impossible for outsiders to realize that this ordinary stone bead was actually the precious Grotto Heaven magic treasure. This storage bag indeed contains the items that I need to cultivate the 9 Extinction Holy Sword. Ziyue's eyes lit up. He flipped his hand and took out a jade bottle from the storage bag. When he opened the jade bottle, there was immediately a 9-colored divine light that rippled and slowly rose up. This 9-colored divine light seemed to contain endless mystery. Just by rising up slightly, it immediately caused the air to vibrate as if it was about to burst. 9 Extinction Holy Spirit? I did not expect that when cultivating the 9 Extinction Holy Sword, I can directly absorb and use the 9 Extinction Holy Spirit. This saves me a lot of hard work. Ziyue could not help but let out a joyful expression. Originally, he used the Qingxian mountain to exchange for the various materials that he needed to cultivate the 9 Extinction Holy Sword. Although those materials could be directly absorbed and used by him, it required a lot of complicated steps to follow. During cultivation, using it in such a detailed manner would naturally take a longer time. As for the 9 Extinction Divine Aura that was directly condensed, it was originally refined from many materials used to cultivate the 9 Extinction Divine Sword. Not only was the effect more prominent, the absorption speed was also faster. It could be said to be of great help to his cultivation progress. A total of 5,009 Extinction Divine Aura is enough for me to cultivate the 9 Extinction Divine Sword to the beginner level. Ziyue mumbled as his gaze shifted to the second bag of holding. Void Stone, Fortune Gilt, Moonlight Stone, then came the third one. The third storage bag had the most items and was also the most miscellaneous. However, in terms of value, it was the lowest of the 3 storage bags. Most of them were abandoned magical equipment or huge amounts of metals, stones, and minerals. The treasures in the 2 storage bags had different uses for Ziyue. Among them, the Emptiness Stone, Fortune Gilt, Moonlight Stone, and other materials were prepared by Ziyue in order to use the heaven and earth in his sleeves to attempt to refine a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure. Although the number of treasures was small, the materials in the storage bag were enough for him to try 3 times. In his opinion, if he could successfully refine a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure once out of 3 times, it would be worth it. As for the abandoned magical equipment and other materials in the 3rd storage bag, he deliberately asked Lu Yudao to collect them in order to advance his natal Dharma treasure. This time, with the help of the Qingxian Mountain token, they were all transported. Of course, the price was also not cheap. Ziyue had many gains in the Star Source Holy Mountain. Other than the Flower of Tao, the Star Source Holy Stone, and other things that he needed, most of them were disposed of by him. Whether it is cultivating the 9 Extinction Divine Sword, refining a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure, or refining a natal flying sword, it is closely related to the strength of the cultivator. The stronger the strength, the higher the efficiency of refining a natal flying sword, whether it is cultivating Tao techniques, refining a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure, or refining a natal flying sword. Now that my spiritual power has reached more than 650 million, it is enough to raise my strength to the late stage of the Golden Elixir realm. It is just nice to raise my strength by another level. Ziyue knew in his heart how important one's strength was to him. Not only did he say this, but in his heart, there was also a sense of danger hanging high above his head at all times. It was the experts from the 9-star Tao Palace, the Heavenly Spirit Sect, and the True Devil Sect. Naturally, he knew that the stronger he was, the safer he would be. Without hesitation, Ziyue's gaze fell on his attribute panel. Spending 10 million points of spiritual power can raise the cultivation progress of the middle stage of the Supreme Primordial Tao technique from 40% to 41%. Upgrade. With a calm gaze, Ziyue firmly chose to upgrade. His body shook and his aura rose slightly, as if in this short moment, he had become more tyrannical. Continue. Spending 100 million points of spiritual power can raise the cultivation progress of the middle stage of the Supreme Primordial Tao technique from 41% to 51%. Upgrade. Buzz. His aura rose once again, and the light in his eyes seemed to shine even brighter. Then, Ziyue seemed to be no longer satisfied with this step by step, and decided to go all the way. Spending 490 million points of spiritual power can raise the cultivation progress of the supreme primordial Tao technique from the middle stage, 51%, to the late stage, 0%. Upgrade. Ziyue chose to upgrade without hesitation. Boom. In an instant, a terrifying wave of spiritual qi of heaven and earth seemed to have descended from the heavens, and all of it poured into Ziyue's body. The aura on his body also rose rapidly as this special energy poured into him. Not only did the pure violet golden elixir in his body rapidly solidify and expand, but even the soul in his body also rose rapidly as his cultivation level rose. This was an all-round upgrade. Not only was the pure violet golden elixir expanding, but the soul was also strengthening. Ziyue's pure violet elixir energy was also rapidly transforming and baptizing, becoming even more powerful. Even his physical body, due to the transformation of the pure violet elixir energy, became stronger and tougher as it flowed. Breakthrough. From the middle stage of the golden elixir realm, I have completely broken through to the late stage of the golden elixir realm. As for my spiritual energy, it was reduced from the original 650 million to the current 50 million. It could be said that it had decreased by a large amount. However, all of this is worth it, because I can truly feel how powerful I am. This kind of power is really intoxicating. Extreme joy flashed across Ziyue's eyes. Chapter 702. With the breakthrough in his realm, Ziyue's strength in all aspects also soared. His every movement seemed to carry a special aura. When he looked up slightly, there seemed to be a bright light flickering in his eyes. After breaking through to the later stage of the golden core realm, my strength has naturally increased as well. If I go all out, I should have completely surpassed the early stage of the primordial spirit realm and reached the middle stage of the primordial spirit realm. However, I wonder what level my strength will be in the middle stage of the primordial spirit realm? Ziyue pondered silently. Without a comparison, there was naturally no way to determine his true strength. However, the various changes after the improvement of his strength still made him feel peaceful and satisfied. He also silently experienced his own strength and the changes in his perception of the world around him. After a while, he came back to his senses and laughed to himself. His gaze fell on the 3 storage bags again. After thinking about it, Ziyue decided to upgrade his intrinsic flying sword first. That was because the intrinsic flying sword was his Tao protector and could be compatible with his one sword cleaving all techniques. It could greatly increase his strength and could be said to be excellent. Therefore, he stretched out his hand and pointed slightly in front of him. Chi. All of a sudden, the bag of holding was filled with discarded magical treasures, as well as a vast amount of metal, stone, and spiritual materials, all of which fell to the ground. There was a huge amount of them like a small mountain. Although many of the materials and Dharma treasures had been abandoned, they were not of low quality and their spirituality had not been completely destroyed. Therefore, they were all shining with golden light and spiritual light. Then, Ziyue stretched out his hand and beckoned. Buzz. His intrinsic flying sword immediately turned into a beam of spiritual light and rushed out. Then, with a slight flash, it directly floated above all the materials. Let's begin. With a thought, Ziyue hurriedly controlled his intrinsic Dharma treasure. Instantly, the spiritual light on his intrinsic flying sword shone brightly. An extremely strong suction force was generated from the intrinsic flying sword. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The endless spiritual materials trembled. The essence of the various Dharma treasures, the essence of metals and stones, the creation, all of them seemed to be attracted and turned into beams of spiritual light that surged into the intrinsic flying sword. It was accompanied by the soft hum of the intrinsic flying sword. As the essence of various materials surged in, the spirituality and power of the intrinsic flying sword also began to increase. Whoosh! Gasp! Moreover, as the flying sword's aura became stronger, the spiritual light that existed on the flying sword also became stronger. Under Ziyue's control, coupled with the light of spiritual wisdom's ability to absorb the light of spiritual wisdom, the light of spiritual wisdom kept on absorbing the light of spiritual wisdom. A large amount of metal and stone materials were reduced to powder one after another. Many fragments of magical equipment dimmed as well. The original materials seemed to have been corroded by a mighty force and were quickly worn away. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. As time passed, the mountain of materials and damaged magical treasures quickly disappeared, turning into ordinary objects and dust. The Dark North flying sword has advanced to the level of a mid-grade Jindan treasure. Suddenly, Ziyue's heart stirred, and he couldn't help but reveal a trace of joy. The natal flying sword was a mid-grade gold core treasure. Because it contained spiritual intelligence, it had the possibility of becoming a numinous treasure. Whether it was in terms of power or potential, it was countless times better than a mid-grade gold core treasure of the same level. In Ziyue's hands, whether it was in terms of power or toughness, it was much better than a supreme-grade gold core treasure. However, at this time, he did not stop the sacrificial refining. Now his strength had been upgraded to the late-stage gold core realm. In theory, his natal magic treasure could naturally be upgraded to the level of a superior-grade gold core treasure. Therefore, he continued to control the magic treasure, constantly absorbing various metal and stone essences, spirituality and creation, chi-chi. The last bit of material turned into flying ash and dissipated, but Ziyue's natal flying sword was still stuck at the level of a mid-grade gold core treasure and had not been officially upgraded. Sure enough, the material essences needed to upgrade a magic treasure with spiritual intelligence are far better than that of an ordinary gold core treasure. In this regard, Ziyue was not surprised. Since his natal magic treasure had accidentally awakened its spiritual intelligence and had the possibility of becoming a numinous treasure, he knew that if he wanted to continue upgrading it, the consumption would be very large. This time, he wanted to upgrade the North Sea flying sword continuously, so he naturally made some preparations. Without the slightest pause, Ziyue stretched out his hand and quickly took out a large pile of abandoned magic treasures and spiritual materials from his storage bag. Most of these were the spoils of war that he had obtained from killing many enemies. Among them, except for some magic treasures whose spirituality had been damaged and were difficult to recover, he also took out some gold core treasures that were in perfect condition and could be repaired with a certain price. 3 inferior-grade gold core treasures, 2 middle-grade gold core treasures, 2 superior-grade gold core treasures, and 2 supreme-grade gold core treasures. Ziyue glanced at the materials one by one. Especially the few gold core treasures that were in relatively good condition, including the 2 supreme-grade gold core treasures that he had obtained from the previous generation's chief disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect. Although their spirituality had been damaged to a certain extent by the magnetic divine light that was cast by the Crimson Flame Astral Beast King that was transformed by the King of Magnetism and had not been repaired for more than 100 years, their spirituality had been seriously damaged. In fact, if they were repaired with a certain price and were nourished with core essence for decades, they could also be restored to their original condition. However, at this time, Ziyue took them out without hesitation and threw them out. These magic treasures were very valuable and had the possibility of being restored to their original condition. However, what he valued more was his natal magic treasures. Because natal magic treasures were Tao protectors that could really enhance his strength. In his eyes, they were better than all magic treasures. Although these gold core treasures were good, they were damaged after all. It was better to use them as nourishment and resources for his natal flying sword to upgrade its grade. Moreover, he believed that once his natal magic treasures were upgraded to the same grade, they would definitely be far superior to these magic treasures. For example, the North Sea flying sword was only a middle-grade gold core treasure at this time, but when it was used in his hand, it had already given birth to many supreme-grade gold core treasures. If it continued to upgrade and reach the level of a high-grade gold core treasure, he estimated that it would not be weaker than a real nascent soul treasure. In addition to those gold core treasures, the most precious material in this pile of materials was naturally the piece of black meteorite gold that he had obtained from the rising cloud ancestor. This black meteorite gold is an ancient refining material and is extremely precious. If any magic treasure is added with black meteorite gold, not only will its toughness and hardness be greatly improved, it will also have the effect of avoiding thunder and lightning. It will also have some resistance to the heavenly tribulation. Ziua valued this material very much. He had originally intended to integrate it into his natal magic treasure. At this time, when the magic treasure was upgrading, he felt that it was very suitable. Chapter 703. As a result, Ziua's flying sword vibrated once again. Furthermore, with a thought from Bai Ziua, a ball of scorching white flames whizzed out rapidly. This white flame was Ziua's golden core fire. The golden core fire formed from the perfect violet golden core was extremely hot. It could be said that there was nothing it could not burn and nothing it could not melt. When the golden core fire landed on the black meteorite gold, it became even more powerful after being smelted. However, the pure black meteorite gold was not very tough. Therefore, the black meteorite gold was melted into a ball and turned into a golden stone essence, which was absorbed by Ziua's natal flying sword. Chi, as the black meteorite gold fused into the natal flying sword, it vibrated rapidly and soon became bloated, as if it had expanded a lot in a short time. But shortly after, bits of powder and dregs fell to the ground as if they were repelled by some kind of special force. Then, they were burned to ashes by Ziua's golden core fire. This is because the material of the magic treasure has been refined again. Ziua knew that this was because the black meteorite gold was of such a high grade that when it was fused into the natal flying sword, it would also refine his natal flying sword. These impurities could not withstand the smelting of the black meteorite gold and could only be repelled. As these impurities were removed, the bloated natal flying sword quickly recovered to its original state. However, because of the black meteorite gold, the color of the North Sea flying sword's appearance also changed. It turned into a gold ink color that was neither black nor gold. Moreover, the moment the last wisp of black meteorite gold fused into the natal flying sword, buzz! The natal flying sword immediately made a violent vibrating sound. Then, it shone brightly. Heaven and earth seemed to roar at this moment. As it vibrated, it stirred up the surrounding air and created ripples, as if it was going to tear a hole in the air. It has leveled up? I didn't expect that just by adding the black meteorite gold, my natal flying sword had already leveled up to the level of a superior grade golden core treasure. Ziua could not help but show a hint of surprise on his face. However, he also felt that it was a matter of course. Previously, his natal magic treasure was actually stuck between the mid-grade and high-grade golden core level. It was just that it lacked a certain opportunity. In other words, the essence of metal and stone within those materials was not enough to support the advancement of his flying sword. But now, with the fusion of the ancient material, the black meteorite gold, its essence was immediately refined, and it was very normal for it to be promoted smoothly. But then, Ziua felt his flying sword tremble, vaguely transmitting a kind of extreme desire. Was this the effect of his intellect? Does it need more metal and stone essences and spirituality to nourish itself? Ziua was slightly startled, and then relaxed his control. Buzz! As the flying sword trembled, it immediately turned into a streamer and rushed to the many materials and abandoned magic weapons Ziua had taken out before. Among them, there were a few golden core treasures. A unique light descended from above. Chi, an extremely strong devouring force, followed the descent of the spiritual light and quickly acted on the many materials and magic treasures made of waste gas. A large amount of metal and stone essences, spirituality, then quickly poured into the flying sword like moths to a flame. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, just like that, a few more hours passed. When Ziyue vaguely felt a sense of satisfaction from the flying sword, he immediately understood that his natal flying sword had been completely stabilized and was at the peak of a superior grade golden core level. If he did not have more precious materials, or more accumulation of spiritual essence, or the activation of his own immortal cultivation realm, it would be very difficult for it to advance again in a short period of time and set foot into the level of a superior grade golden core level. However, even if that's the case, the power of my natal magic treasure is already enough for me. In my hands, the power of a superior grade golden core level treasure is no less than that of an inferior grade immortal soul level treasure. Just with the power of the flying sword alone, I can unleash an offensive power comparable to that of an early-stage immortal soul level cultivator. If I use all my combat power and use it together with the one sword breaks all spells, then its offensive power will definitely be extremely strong, and only under my Tao techniques and primordial magnetic divine light. And if I successfully cultivate the 9 extinction divine sword to perfection, and use it together with my natal flying sword, then its power. Ziyue was excited and involuntarily controlled his natal flying sword to shoot out. Whoosh! With just a stroke, a black thread vaguely opened up, and violent ripples fluctuated, causing the surrounding space to tremble. And it was extremely fast. In a flash, even a peak golden core level cultivator would find it difficult to detect its trajectory. It only took 1,000th of a second to cover a distance of 100,000 feet. After a long while, Ziyue put the flying sword back into his body, and let it be nourished by his purple core essence. Dark North Grotto Heaven, Dark North Sect, Dark North Hall. The Dark North Sect's Vice-Sect Master, True Lord Bai, bowed slightly and looked respectfully at the young cultivator before him. He said excitedly, "Sect Master, we have already accounted for the previous harvest. All in all, it is extremely large and extremely large. It is truly beyond our imagination." As he spoke, True Lord Bai seemed to be unable to contain his emotions, and his beard trembled in excitement. Even though he had been cultivating for quite some time now. However, even he had never seen such a bountiful harvest before. Nor had he handled such a huge amount of wealth. Not only were there natural treasures and dharma treasures that he had never dared to imagine, there were also many secret treasures, secret techniques, and cultivation techniques that he had never even heard of. Tell me about it? Ziyue sat on the seat of honor and asked curiously. He knew that the Dark North Sect must have reaped a great harvest from the Mirror Lake mystic ground of the 9-star Tao Palace. After all, the mystic ground was where the elite disciples of the 9-star Tao Palace were nurtured, and there were definitely many treasures. But because he was concerned about the growth of his cultivation and the refinement of his natal flying sword, he had not had the time to listen to the report until now. This time, we have obtained a total of 530,000 high-grade spirit stones. This does not include the 1,500 supreme-grade spirit stones in the spirit vein core. These 1,500 supreme-grade spirit stones. Sect Master, the grade of our spirit vein is only at the beginning of the 4th grade. For most of the disciples, it is barely enough. But for some of the stronger disciples in the sect, it is somewhat insufficient. Therefore, I suggest that we put these 1,500 high-grade spirit stones into the spirit vein core of our Dark North Mountain. I believe that it will not be difficult to upgrade it to the middle or even advanced grade of the 4th grade spirit vein. Having said that, True Monarch Bai cautiously suggested. Chapter 704. The spirit vein is the foundation of a sect, so I will not neglect it. Thank you for your hard work during this period of time. Ziyue glanced at perfected Lord Bai. He knew that with perfected Lord Bai's realm, if he were to cultivate with all his might, the spiritual chi of the beginner grade 4 spirit vein would be insufficient, which would affect the cultivation of the other disciples. Therefore, perfected Lord Bai did not cultivate much during this period of time. At most, he would use the spiritual chi to recover his Jindan essence, but his strength did not improve at all. Therefore, he continued solemnly, even if you did not mention it, I would have used these 1,500 supreme-grade spiritual stones to upgrade the grade of the North Underworld Mountains spirit vein. Also, to be on the safe side, I will take out 200,000 of the 530,000 upper-grade spiritual stones to fill the various parts of the spirit vein and increase its foundation. I believe that it should be able to upgrade the spirit vein to an advanced grade 4 spirit vein. Thank you for your understanding, sect leader. Perfected Lord Bai hurriedly replied emotionally. An advanced grade 4 spirit vein was enough to support the cultivation and development of an immortal sect. Apart from Bai Ziyue, who was a heaven-defying existence, the North Nether sect was definitely far from a true celestial method sect. Therefore, it would be able to support the long-term cultivation of all their disciples. When the spirit vein was upgraded, there would be auspicious signs between heaven and earth. Many disciples would stand out and their strength would be greatly improved. Therefore, he was secretly looking forward to it. His strength had already reached the middle stage of the golden elixir realm. Originally, with his aptitude, he had no hope of reaching a higher stage. However, with the auspicious signs and the many treasures he had obtained this time, he believed that it would not be impossible for him to break through the shackles of the realm and step into the advanced stage of the golden elixir realm, or even the peak stage of the golden elixir realm. In addition to the spiritual stones, we have obtained a total of hundreds of magic treasures of various grades. One of them is an immortal soul treasure called the Qingming Dual Scissors, which belonged to Lu Chongqing, an immortal soul expert. In addition, there are 3 supreme-grade golden elixir treasures, 5 upper-grade golden elixir treasures, and 12 low-grade golden elixir treasures. There are 372 magic treasures of various grades. The supreme-grade gold core treasures are a saber, a sword, and a hammer. They are respectively. In addition to the magic treasures, there are also many heavenly materials and earthly treasures, spiritual pills, and spiritual talismans of various grades. Extreme Earth Spiritual Elixir, 5 Reincarnation Life Elixir, Green Wood Spiritual Fruit, Red Blood Divine Marrow, Fu Shin Pill, 5 Chi 3 Origin Talisman, Apocalyptic Divine Thunder, Essence of Mother Earth. In addition, there were all sorts of array Dao treasures and materials related to alchemy, artifact forging, and so on. The quantity was truly like an ocean. Disregarding everything else, just these materials alone are extremely valuable. It would cost at least 3 million high-grade spirit stones to purchase them. However, the most important thing is still the various inheritances obtained from within. Alchemy, smithing, formation, puppeteering, talisman crafting, godly writing. There were all kinds of heritage that had been left behind, and they were all grade 4 heritage. In other words, according to these inheritances, if a cultivator's talent and potential were good and had sufficient resources, they could follow the prescribed order and directly become a grade 4 alchemy master, weapon crafting master, formation master, or puppet master. It can be said that this is a huge supplement to the cultivation and development of the North Nether sect. Of course, there are also all sorts of cultivation methods, divine powers, great divine powers, and Tao technique inheritances. Although many of the cultivation methods and divine powers inheritances seem to be inferior to those left behind by the sect leader on the stone steps of inheritance. However, these inheritances came from the 9-star Tao Palace after all. The quantity, richness, and quality of these inheritances are far superior to those left behind by the sect leader. It can be said to be of great benefit to the accumulation of our sect. All in all, our harvest this time is really great. If converted to spirit stones, it is definitely not less than 10 million high-grade spirit stones. In fact, it is even more. This is because the inheritances, magic treasures, and so on are all priceless and difficult to buy outside. Then, true Lord Bai continued to speak and began to talk about the harvest in the Mirror Lake secret place. Ziyue nodded repeatedly, but his heart was very calm. He had already expected the harvest this time. The Mirror Lake secret place was a place used by the 9-star Dao Palace to cultivate disciples. It was rich in natural resources, many treasures, and many inheritances. However, although these items were quite valuable, they could not move Bai Ziyue too much. His vision was no longer limited to this. It was only when he heard true Lord Bai mention that he had a Dao technique inheritance that his expression changed slightly, revealing a hint of interest. Seeing this, true Lord Bai's eyes lit up. He quickly flipped his hand and took out a storage bag, saying, "Many of the treasures mentioned above have been sealed in the sect's secret vault and will be used in the future. However, there are also some treasures that I have specially selected that may be beneficial to the sect leader's cultivation. They are all placed in this storage bag." As he spoke, he quickly and respectfully handed over the storage bag. How thoughtful! Ziyue reached out to take it and scanned it with his divine sense. As expected, he found that in the storage bag, other than the inferior primordial spirit treasure used by Lu Chongqing, there were 3 supreme-grade golden core treasures, 5 superior-grade golden core treasures, and other high-grade Dharma treasures. There were also some heavenly treasures that could increase a cultivator's immortal cultivation realm, recovery-type spirit pills, and some heavenly treasures that were placed separately. However, what Ziyue valued the most were the dozen or so special inheritance stone tablets in the storage bag. After thinking about it, Ziyue did not directly investigate the inheritances. Instead, he flipped his hand and took out a supreme-grade golden core treasure flying sword. He handed it to true Lord Bai and said, "This flying sword is of good quality. You can use it to protect yourself." This. "Thank you, sect leader." True Lord Bai was stunned. Then, a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face as he spoke. Although these treasures had passed through his hands, he was very clear about them. All of these belonged to the sect leader. In fact, everything in the North Nether sect belonged solely to the sect leader. Therefore, as long as the sect leader did not say anything, even if he was very tempted by these treasures, he would not dare to use them at all. At this moment, Bai Ziyue directly gave him a gift, and it was even a flying sword of excellent quality and power. One could imagine the excitement in his heart. "You deserve this. It is also a compensation for your hard work during this period of time. In addition, we have gained a lot this time. Every disciple in the sect has contributed greatly. You and the others can draw up a rule and give out appropriate rewards and punishment." Ziyue waved his hand and said, "Yes." True Lord Bai responded respectfully and then silently left. Chapter 705. Seeing true Lord Bai leave, Ziyue's gaze fell on the many inheritances in his storage bag. With a wave of his hand, a total of 15 inheritance steals appeared in front of him. These inheritance steals were all restricted by the 9-star Dao Palace. If one did not have the corresponding method to break them, even if one could see the introduction of the inheritance through the gaps in the restrictions, it would be difficult to see the true secrets within and truly obtain these inheritances. Therefore, although true Lord Bai had received these inheritances before, he did not have the corresponding method to break them. Therefore, he could only see the names of the inheritances but not the true inheritances. However, this was not a problem for Ziyue. With a flip of his hand, Ziyue quickly took out a special token. This token was the Sun token he had obtained from the Sun-Moon-Star token of the Rising Cloud Ancestor. The Sun-Moon-Star tokens of the 9-star Tao Palace are clearly ranked. Many restrictions and formations can be broken with the help of the Star token, Moon token, Sun token, and Sun-Moon-Star token. The Sun token is already one of the higher-ranked tokens in the 9-star Tao Palace. It can be used to break the majority of the inheritances. Now that the Sun-Moon-Star token of the Rising Cloud Ancestor is in my hands, as long as the restrictions on these inheritance steals are not specifically changed, they will not hinder me from breaking the restrictions. Ziyue muttered to himself. The restrictions on these inheritance steals were naturally not changed. Generally speaking, unless there was a great crisis, the 9-star Tao Palace would not specifically change the restrictions on so many inheritances because of 1 or 2 Sun tokens or Moon tokens. Therefore, when Ziyue controlled the Sun token, he shot out beams of spiritual light. 1. Immediately, the restrictions on the inheritances were broken one after another. 7 great mystique inheritances, 5 cultivation method inheritances that lead to the peak of the Golden Core Realm, 1 cultivation method inheritance that leads to the late primordial spirit realm, 1 Tao technique inheritance, and 1 primordial spirit treasure refinement method. Ziyue checked them one by one. Although his expression did not change, he could not help but feel excited. Among these inheritances, the 7 great mystique inheritances and 5 cultivation method inheritances that lead to the peak of the Golden Core Realm were nothing to him. With his current strength, he had no use for it at all. However, in his opinion, the cultivation technique inheritance that allowed one to reach the late primordial spirit realm and the Tao technique inheritance were extremely valuable. Even the refinement method of the origin spirit treasure caused his mind to tremble. The late-stage essence soul realm cultivation technique, 9 cycles heavenly lightning tribulation, Taoist technique legacy, great Tao aspect, and a refinement method for essence soul realm treasures known as Great Luo armor. Ziyue could not help but look at the 3 inheritances. He invaded Zhang Xian's spiritual perception and began to examine it carefully. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The 9 cycles of heavenly lightning tribulation is actually a cultivation method that cultivates by gathering the lightning of the heavens and earth. The lightning of heaven and earth was divided into spring lightning, summer lightning, autumn lightning, winter lightning. There were also lightning that was mysteriously produced due to various changes in the environment of heaven and earth. Although most of them were weaker than the lightning of the heavenly lightning tribulation experienced by Golden Core Realm cultivators, if one cultivated this cultivation method at the Golden Core Realm, one's chances of overcoming the heavenly lightning tribulation would be increased by more than 30% when breaking through from the peak of the Golden Core Realm to the primordial spirit realm. For many cultivators who aspire to attain the primordial spirit realm, this is a supreme cultivation method. Ziyue silently comprehended the wonders of the cultivation method of the 9 cycles heavenly lightning tribulation and could not help but be amazed by its ingenuity. However, the supreme primordial Tao technique that he had created himself did not have as many advantages as the 9 cycles heavenly lightning tribulation when overcoming the heavenly lightning tribulation. However, it was indeed the most suitable cultivation method for him and could increase his strength the most. Naturally, he would not choose to change his cultivation method. However, after I break through to the primordial spirit realm, this cultivation method can be used as a foundation for me. It can be used as a reference for me to create my own cultivation method for the primordial spirit realm. Ziyue memorized the wonders of the cultivation method in his mind. This Tao technique inheritance, Great Way Dharma form, actually has a lot in common with my great divine spiritual Dharma body. However, compared to the divine spiritual Dharma body, this Great Way Dharma form is much more powerful in terms of its subtlety, power, and the growth of my strength. After all, Tao techniques are still Tao technique. They can affect the natural order and their power is naturally more terrifying. Once I cultivate it and reach the level of perfection, my strength will definitely increase tremendously. Ziyue was very satisfied with this Tao technique legacy. Although it was not an offensive Tao technique. However, this method of increasing one's strength could allow his strength, which was not weak to begin with, to soar once again. This made him even more delighted. After all, he already had the primordial magnet divine light and the 9 extinction divine sword for offensive Tao technique. He did not lack this one. As for the final primordial spirit treasure, the refinement method of the Daluo armor. This Daluo armor is one of the rare treasures that can directly protect a cultivator's primordial spirit. It can be worn directly on a cultivator's primordial spirit and become one with it. Once an attack lands on the primordial spirit and fails to break through the Daluo armor, it will not cause any harm to the primordial spirit within the armor. A precious treasure. A precious treasure. Once the Daluo armor is refined, it will definitely be a precious treasure. There is almost no primordial spirit realm cultivator who would not be tempted. Who would have thought that apart from the Tao technique legacy and the great Tao Dharma form, I would also have such an unexpected gain? Ziyue's breathing quickened immediately. He was well aware of the value of the Daluo armor. In his opinion, it was even more valuable than a Tao technique legacy. The only pity was that the Daluo armor did not have a physical object. It only had the refinement method. However, thinking about it, this is also extremely normal. If the Daluo armor really exists, then it won't be so easy for me to kill Lu Chongqing. At the very least, his primordial spirit will definitely be able to escape with the help of the Daluo armor. Another thing worth mentioning is that although the Daluo armor is precious, it is definitely a precious treasure. However, it is extremely difficult to refine and the materials used to refine it are hard to find. It is definitely enormous and definitely not something that an ordinary cultivator or primordial spirit realm cultivator would be able to bear. Ziyue could not help but reveal a helpless expression when he recalled the refinement method of the Daluo armor recorded in the legacy stele. Although most of the materials required were not rare in the world, there were still 9 of them that were comparable to the ancient materials used to refine black meteoric gold. It was no wonder that Lu Chongqing was unable to refine such a precious treasure even though he had grasped the refinement method. Furthermore, if he wanted to truly refine the Daluo armor, he would at least need to invite an initial 5th-grade weapon refiner to have some confidence. A 5th-grade weapon refiner's status was even higher than that of an ordinary primordial spirit realm cultivator. Even 4th-grade weapon refiners were extremely rare in the entire astral boundary, and 5th-grade weapon refiners were even rarer. The price to invite such a figure would definitely not be low. Chapter 706. But this isn't much of a problem for me. As long as I collect 1 or 2 refining methods that can reach the level of grade 5, I can use the attribute panel to raise my refining ability to the early stage of grade 5, the middle stage of grade 5, and even the high stage of grade 5. Ziyue's eyes brightened. For others, if they wanted to refine the Daluo armor, the most difficult thing would be to find a grade 5 weapon craftsman and ask them to refine it. But for him, it was nothing. The only thing that he found difficult was actually gathering the materials. 9 types of ancient refining materials comparable to black meteorite gold. Not to mention him, even a super force would find it difficult to gather all of them in a short period of time. I can only ask Azure Mystic Mountain for the materials. Although it might be difficult to gather all of them, it's better than doing it all by myself. Ziyue was not a pedantic person. Since he was cooperating with Azure Mystic Mountain, he naturally would not ignore this power and not make use of it. After all, Azure Mystic Mountain was one of the 10 super factions of the Star Realm. Whether it was in terms of gathering treasures or the collection of treasures in their treasury, they were far superior to him. With a thought, he did not hesitate. His figure flashed, and he charged out of the northern underworld wonderland. The next moment, he appeared in the cave he had been in. The cave was completely calm and had not changed in the slightest. Ziyue flipped his hand and took out the Azure Mystic Mountain token. He casually tapped on the Qingxian Mountain token. Bzzz. There was a rumbling sound, and in an instant, a spiritual light appeared. Then, a human figure appeared in front of Bai Ziyue in the sky above the spiritual light. It was the Elder of Azure Mystic Mountain who had given him the Azure Mystic Mountain token, Daoist Xianxian. Daoist Northern Underworld? I didn't think that you'd come to find me so soon. Do you want to find out the whereabouts of another secret place in the 9-star Dao Palace? Daoist Xianxian looked at Ziyue and smiled. We'll talk about the secret place later. This time, I want to borrow Azure Mystic Mountain to help me gather a few things. Also, help me gather some information. Bai Ziyue did not beat around the bush and said directly, a blacksmith's inheritance that can lead to the beginning of the 5th grade. Of course, the higher the inheritance's grade, the better. It would be best if it could be at the middle of the 5th grade or the high of the 5th grade. At the same time, help me find out if there are any grade 4 array masters in the firmament territory. Similarly, the stronger the array master's array skills are, the better. Also, help me gather some materials. These include 1,000 feather star, 1,000 water, earth spirit rhinoceros. Blacksmith's inheritance? Array master? There are these materials. Daoist Su Xian looked deeply at Bai Ziyue and said, in the immortal spell world, there are very few blacksmiths above the 4th grade, let alone the 5th grade. As far as I know, in the entire firmament territory, only Master Jianheng of the Nature Sect has reached the early level 5 in refining weapons. Not to mention this kind of inheritance that can lead to a grade 5 blacksmith grandmaster. On the other hand, grade 4 array masters are many times more difficult than blacksmithing, but there are still some grade 4 array masters in the Azure Mystic Mountain. As for the 1,000 feather star, 1,000 water, and earth spirit rhinoceros, Daoist Xuanxuan's face showed a trace of embarrassment. Can you gather them? Ziyue frowned. Yes. Daoist Xuxuan slowly nodded and said, my Azure Mystic Mountain has existed for even longer than the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. 10,000 years ago, we suffered an unprecedented blow. Although we suffered a great loss, our foundation is still very deep. Although the inheritance of grade 5 and above is precious and rare, we still have 1 or 2. 1,000 feather star, 1,000 water, earth spirit rhinoceros, and other materials. Except for 1 or 2 that have been used up, most of the treasures of Azure Mystic Mountain still have some left. However, Daoist North Ming, everything in this world has a price. Even in Azure Mystic Mountain, the inheritance of grade 5 and above is extremely precious. Not to mention the 1,000 feather star, 1,000 water, earth spirit rhinoceros, and other materials are mostly ancient materials. Now that the method of synthesis has been lost, it can be said that they are used less and less. Therefore, the price to take these materials out of Azure Mystic Mountain's treasury is also very high. What are the conditions? Ziyue was not surprised. Although he had cooperated with Azure Mystic Mountain, it was based on the principle of mutual benefit and fairness. The other party would not give him benefits for no reason, and he would not let them use him and ignore his own danger. It was very normal for them to raise conditions. Actually, if you are willing to accept our conditions and join Azure Mystic Mountain, what's wrong with giving you the inheritance of blacksmithing? As for the materials, we can also give them to you for free as a reward. Daoist Xianxian paused and suddenly said. Obviously, he had not given up on roping Ziyue in. In fact, the strength and potential that Ziyue had displayed in the Mirror Lake's secret realm had not only shocked him, but had also reached the ears of the Mountain Lord of Azure Mystic Mountain. Even the Mountain Lord of Azure Mystic Mountain was moved and wanted to recruit him. It could be said that although Bai Ziyue was only a golden elixir realm cultivator, he had already attracted the attention of many peak primordial soul realm cultivators, including the Palace Master of the Nine Stars Dao Palace, the Mountain Master of Mount Qing Xian, the Sect Master of the Celestial Spirit Sect, and the Sect Master of the True Devil Sect. It was also because of this that Taoist Xian of Azure Mystic Mountain had repeatedly tried to rope Zhu in. "Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Why don't you state your conditions?" Ziyue shook his head and said, "All right." Although Taoist Xian was somewhat regretful, he did not say more. His expression turned serious as he said, "I just received news that the Nine-Star Palace will be sending the Confucian god, Wang Xuezhi, to hunt you down. Although Wang Xuezhi is here to kill you, his Confucian techniques are indeed extraordinary. In the past, in the true law domain, he posed a great threat to the disciples of Azure Mystic Mountain. The son of a great figure of Azure Mystic Mountain had fallen at the hands of Wang Xuezhi. Therefore, within Azure Mystic Mountain, we have already set up a bounty on Wang Xuezhi. If you can kill Wang Xuezhi, then the Xuandian of Creation, an advanced 5th-grade weaponsmith, will be given to you as a reward. This is just right for you. However, I must warn you that the strength of this Confucian god, Wang Xuezhi, is countless times stronger than the likes of the Ascending Cloud Ancestor and Lu Chongqing. He is also at the peak of the mid-stage primordial soul realm, and has the battle record of suppressing 3 true cultivators of the same level and not losing to a late-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. It won't be that easy to kill him." "I understand." Ziyue felt a chill in his heart. He had long guessed that the Nine-Star Palace would send experts to hunt him down, but he did not expect it to be Wang Xuezhi. Chapter 707. However, he did not feel much fear in his heart. The Confucian god Wang Xuezhi might be very powerful. If it was before, he would have no chance of winning. But now, he had reached the late stage of the golden elixir realm, and his strength had increased greatly. He believed that even if he could not defeat Wang Xuezhi, he would not be too far behind. At least, it would not be difficult for him to escape. However, the reward of the mystical classic of creation is to kill this Confucian god Wang Xuezhi. Ziyue frowned when he thought of Taoist Su Xian's condition. He was confident that he could escape from Wang Xuezhi, or at least not lose. But if he wanted to kill Wang Xuezhi, based on Wang Xuezhi's record and the fact that he had never fought him, he was not too confident. "There's no hurry. With the speed of my strength improvement, I will be able to kill him sooner or later." Ziyue was calm. At most, he would wait for a while until his mystical classic of creation reached the peak of the golden elixir realm, or until his Dharma form and 9 extinction divine sword reached perfection. He was not in a hurry. Of course, killing Wang Xuezhi is only the reward of the mystical classic of creation. As for the information of the formation masters, I can give it to you and help you get a recommendation letter. But the 1,000-feather star, 1,000-changing water, earth spirit rhinoceros, and other materials need to be exchanged with treasures. We have 7 of the 9 main materials in our vault. We also know where the remaining 2 may be. As long as you pay the price, we can send someone to get them for you. Taoist Su Xian spoke again. Of course. Ziyue nodded. As Taoist Su Xian said, there was a price for everything. The 1,000-feather star and other materials were valuable. They were ancient materials, so they were naturally precious. However, he truly did place great importance on the all-heaven armor. He knew that it would be a great treasure for him to protect himself in the future. Moreover, it was an extremely rare treasure that could defend against physical and energy attacks, as well as soul attack. Anyone who saw it would be tempted. Even if the price was high, he wanted to give it a try. There are 3 methods. You can choose one. Taoist Su Xian nodded and said, First, treasures. Enough treasures, 3 low-grade origin spirit treasures or 1 mid-grade origin spirit treasure. Ziyue frowned. 3 low-grade primordial spirit treasures? Or a mid-grade primordial spirit treasure? The Daluo armor that he wanted to forge this time would only be a low-grade soul treasure at most when it was completed. He would have to hire an early 5th-tier blacksmith to forge it. In the end, just the materials alone required 3 essence soul treasures? One had to know that even a large sect like the Qingshu sect did not have a single lower-grade primordial spirit treasure. Secondly, the inheritance of the cultivation method that fellow Taoist has cultivated. This cultivation method inheritance was the most precious, but also the least valuable. This was because to those who had it, it was nothing. However, to those who didn't, it was exactly what they wished for. However, fellow Taoist, you don't have to worry that we will recklessly spread the cultivation method after we obtain it. Furthermore, you don't have to think that we are really coveting fellow Taoists' inheritance. This is because there are simply too many cultivation method inheritances in Mount Qingxian. Not only do we have cultivation method inheritances that reach the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm, but we also have an attack method left behind by a mighty figure of the immortal path. No matter how powerful your cultivation method is, can it compare to the heritage of Mount Qingxian that has been preserved for 100,000 years? Taoist Su Xian smiled and said, He did have the right to be arrogant. Mount Qingxian had been in power for 100,000 years. At its peak, it was even more powerful than the 9-star Taoist palace. It even had the existence of a mighty figure of the immortal path. What kind of cultivation method inheritance did it not have? It was just that collecting cultivation method inheritances seemed to be an instinct of the major immortal path factions. This was also one of the reasons why many factions were able to achieve eternal glory. Only when the cultivation method was not destroyed could they rise again. What about the third method? Ziyue asked noncommittally. The third method is for us to sign a blood contract with fellow Taoists. Fellow Taoist will serve Mount Qingxian for 100 years. 4 high-level cultivators like you and me, 100 years will pass in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, we will only ask fellow Taoist to complete 3 tasks for us at most, and most of them will be assigned according to the strength of the Golden Elixir Realm cultivator. For someone like fellow Taoist who can go against the odds and slay immortals, this is very easy. Taoist Su Xian paused and smiled. However, I think that since fellow Taoist is not even willing to officially join Mount Qingxian, you would be even more unwilling to sign a blood contract and be bound by us for 100 years. Ziyue nodded. He was indeed unwilling to choose the third method. The third method seemed to cost nothing, but the price was actually greater, especially for him. The height that he could reach in 100 years might be beyond Taoist Su Xian's imagination. A mighty figure of the immortal path? Or even stronger. He did not want to be bound by this. So, fellow Taoist, are you choosing to give away your cultivation method inheritance? Taoist Su Xian guessed. No. Ziyue shook his head. Perhaps it was as Taoist Su Xian said, that Mount Qingxian did not care about his cultivation method inheritance. However, in Ziyue's opinion, even if his cultivation method inheritance could only be cultivated to the peak of the Golden Elixir realm, it would definitely surpass any other cultivation method in the world. He did not know if there was a cultivation method inheritance of the same level in Mount Qingxian, but he was not willing to give it away so easily. Moreover, Taoist Su Xian said that he was unwilling, but he did not know if it was true. After all, his strength and realm were there for all to see. If Mount Qingxian wanted to find the source, they would definitely find the answer from his cultivation method. Otherwise, they would not have made the cultivation method inheritance one of the conditions. Therefore, Ziyue said faintly, I choose the first method, 3 lower primordial soul treasures. As he said that, he flipped his hand and 3 lower primordial soul treasures were taken out from his hand. These 3 primordial soul treasures were the spoils of war that he obtained after killing the 3 primordial soul realm cultivators, Patriarch Bitterchick, Patriarch Rising Cloud, and Lu Chongqing. With his strength and means, these lower primordial soul treasures would not be able to increase his strength by much. It would be better to exchange them for what he needed. Therefore, he did not hesitate. Then, he tapped on the Mount Qingxian token and activated the positioning method and the item transportation formation. Whoosh! A special spiritual light was emitted and directly sucked the 3 lower primordial soul treasures into it. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In a burst of intense spiritual light, the 3 lower primordial soul treasures were transported by the transportation formation. 1 day later, I will send you the location information of the array masters in the firmament territory, as well as the possible location of the Confucian god, Wang Shuozhi. You are on your own. Taoist Su Xian's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise when he saw this, and then he cut off the transmission. Zhua looked at the Mount Qingxian token and then put it away into the northern underworld grotto heaven. After a moment of silence, he got up and did not stay there any longer. Soon, he left. Chapter 708. Overall, he was quite satisfied with this deal. Although the price was great, he had killed Wang Shuozhi and obtained 3 inferior primordial spirit treasures. Among them, killing Wang Shuozhi was something that he had to do the moment Wang Shuozhi was sent to attack him. It was also convenient for him to be able to exchange it for the inheritance of an advanced 5th-grade weapon craftsman. It was already a bargain for him. As for the 3 inferior primordial spirit treasures, they were very valuable. It was indeed extremely valuable, but in his view, exchanging 3 treasures that he had no use for the origin immortal armor that could protect him in the future was definitely worth it. He would not regret it. Next, let's continue forward. For me now, whether it is the cloud-piercing mountain range or the Gusha mountain range, it is not suitable for me to stay for long. I can only go forward, to the place where the spirit chi is more abundant and there are more experts. Only then can I continue to improve and grow. Zhua's goal was clear. He knew very well that his strength was built up from the souls of a large number of powerhouses. In places like the cloud-piercing mountain range and the Gusha mountain range that were relatively poor in resources, there were very few experts. The strongest were only at the peak of the Golden Core realm and the early stage of the Primordial Spirit realm. Their strength was not high and their numbers were limited. Unless he killed everyone in these 2 areas, it would be difficult to accumulate his strength and continue to improve. In his heart, he was not the kind of crazy person who liked to kill. If they did not provoke him, he would not deliberately make a move. Therefore, he could only go forward, to the place where resources were abundant, spirit chi was abundant, and experts were abundant. In the firmament territory, the place with the most experts is the purple-green mountains where the Celestial Spirit sect and the Nature sect are located. The 2 superforces, one in the north and the other in the south, are in the mountains. In addition, there are various immortal method forces and sects everywhere. Countless experts gather. One can imagine how rich the resources are here. The number of experts that can be born must be very large. Zhua muttered to himself. Even if he had already formed a deadly feud with the Celestial Spirit sect. But he could not retreat and not go to the purple-green mountains because of this. Not to mention, he still remembered his agreement with Fan Qingyu and Zhao Yu. Since he had agreed, he naturally had to abide by it. He had to meet them. It will take at least 2 days to reach the purple-green mountains from here, even if I travel at full speed. If we drive a warship, it will take at least half a month. Zhua was not in a hurry. Therefore, with a thought, he summoned the warship. Even for him, the speed of the warship was relatively slow. However, with the help of the warship, he was able to cultivate at the same time. Knowing that a strong enemy was about to make a move on him, he naturally had to fight for even the slightest bit of time to improve his strength. 1. The array was activated, and the warship rose into the air. He pushed his speed to the limit and rushed forward in one direction. As for Ziyue, he sat cross-legged in one of the secret cultivation rooms on the battleship. With a flip of his hand, he produced a jade bottle. As soon as Zhang Xian opened the jade bottle, a 9-colored divine light slowly rose into the air. It was the 9-extinction godly fiend that was necessary to cultivate the 9-extinction godly sword. He performed a hand seal, causing the flying sword in his body to dash out and execute a series of mystical techniques. As a unique godly glow was emitted from the sword, he immediately directed it to merge the streams of the 9-extinction godly aura into it. Chi. There was a soft trembling sound as the two merged. Then, Ziyue performed the 9-extinction godly sword and absorbed it into his body. The power of the pure purple elixir essence was activated, and it quickly began to refine the unique 9-extinction godly aura. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Bai Ziyue's eyes flickered with excitement all of a sudden. The 9-extinction godly sword is indeed a sword deity Dao technique. Not only is it difficult to perform, but it is also much more difficult to form a Dao technique seed in my body than ordinary super skills. Even with my refining power, it took me a full 5 minutes to refine the 9-extinction godly aura. Ziyue could not help but sigh. The most difficult part of refining the 9-extinction godly aura was not to completely dissolve it and refine it into the body. It was the 9-extinction murderous aura that was contained within the aura. The 9-extinction murderous aura directly affected his mind and willpower. Once his mind was unstable, the refining progress would be slowed down. If his willpower was destroyed by the impact, the aura would spread and cause damage to the cultivator's body. Ziyue's willpower was not bad, but he had underestimated its strength at the beginning. In his fluster, he naturally wasted time. Continue. Although the 9-extinction godly aura's impact is strong, it is not a problem for me. Ziyue began to refine it again. He reached out and began to perform the 9-extinction godly sword cultivation method, while guiding the aura. This time, he directly guided 3 streams of 9-extinction godly aura into it. Boom, boom, boom. 3 streams of 9-extinction godly aura attacked at the same time, and its strength was naturally much stronger than one. However, Ziyue's willpower was as strong as steel and as immovable as a mountain. He was continuously attacked, but he did not collapse. The power of the pure purple elixir essence in his body circulated slightly and began to slowly refine the 9-extinction godly aura. After more than 10 minutes, the 3 streams of 9-extinction godly aura were completely refined. Ziyue heaved a sigh of relief, and his eyes regained their clarity. 3 streams. Although it is a little difficult, it is still not my limit. Next, let's try 5 streams. With a thought, he began to perform the absorption again. This time, 5 streams of 9-extinction godly aura entered his body. Boom, boom, boom. The strong impact of the aura made Ziyue's head dizzy. However, he guarded his spiritual altar tightly and maintained his consciousness. The power of the pure purple elixir essence continued to circulate and refine the aura. Finally, he managed to refine the 5 streams of aura quickly. After 5 streams, another 5 streams. He did not continue to increase the number of streams of aura he refined at once. It was not that he could not bear it, but it was the most efficient method that he had tested. If there were more, he could bear it. However, the time needed to absorb and refine the aura would be much longer. Time passed by as he repeated the process. After a day, Ziyue felt that his body was bloated. He felt a little tired in his mind. Have I reached my limit? It is difficult to refine more 9 extinction godly aura in a short period of time? Ziyue could not help but let out a long sigh. The 9 extinction godly aura was not compatible with cultivators. Only with the help of the 9 extinction godly sword Dao technique could one refine it into one's body and condense it into a Dao technique seed. At this moment, it was obvious that the number of 9 extinction godly aura had exceeded the limit that his body could bear. He needed to cultivate and refine it to get used to more 9 extinction godly aura entering his body. That was why he felt bloated. If there were more, the 9 extinction godly aura in his body might go berserk. Chapter 709. Seeing this, Ziyue did not force it. He stopped his cultivation. The Ziji golden elixir in his body trembled, and a huge amount of elixir essence flowed, turning into a raging river. His mind was immersed in his body, and he began to sort out the 9 extinction divine wraiths in his body. Bit by bit, he transformed it into a Dao technique seed. This was also a work that required time and effort. A Dao technique seed was many times more complicated than a superpower seed. In addition to refining it, he also needed to sort out its structure. Only then would his physical body be able to adapt to the power of the Dao technique and use it smoothly. The 9 extinction divine sword is not the primary magnetic divine light. The primary magnetic divine light has the primary magnetic cut as a prerequisite and can be improved directly through spiritual energy. The cultivation of the 9 extinction divine sword can only rely on myself to refine it bit by bit. It requires time and effort. At least, it is like this before I reach the entry level. Ziyue understood. Before his attributes panel could be upgraded, he had to cultivate a certain technique to the entry level. Now that he had not reached the entry level of the 9 extinction divine sword, he naturally could not upgrade it. However, after a few hours of cultivation, I managed to cultivate this Dao technique to the level of uninitiated, 8%. Based on my calculations, I estimate that I will be able to officially initiate this Dao technique in around 10 days. Ziyue's gaze fell on his attributes panel as he silently calculated. As for the Great Path Dharma form, it was difficult for him to upgrade it due to the lack of cultivation materials. Of course, he had also borrowed the power of Qingxian Mountain to begin collecting the cultivation materials for this Dao technique. Although the price was a little more expensive than usual, Bai Ziyue had just cleaned out the Mirror Lake mystic realm of the 9-star Dao Palace, so he was quite rich. 70 to 80,000 superior spiritual stones were nothing to him now. 3 days later, Ziyue appeared in the sky above a sea. The boundless sea. I didn't expect this place to be so close to the boundless sea. Is my hometown, the ancient barren region, across from here? Ziyue looked into the depths of the sea. Even with his eyesight, he could not see the border. It felt like the end of the endless sea was directly connected to the heavens and earth. The rising and setting of the sun was also completed at the end of the sea. This sea is countless times larger than the sea in my previous life. Ziyue sighed. With his current eyesight, he could see clearly from thousands of miles away if he tried his best to look around without any obstructions or obstructions. But even under such circumstances, it was still difficult to see the end of the sea. Only a few islands would appear in his eyes. One could imagine how vast the sea was. As expected of the endless ocean, there were countless creatures. There were also a lot of killings. Just by staying here for a while, I could clearly feel the increase in my soul power. It's several times faster than on land. Ziyue was suddenly startled as he looked at the attribute panel. Previously, due to the increase in his spiritual energy after his breakthrough, he was only left with about 50 million spiritual energy points. After 3 days of hurrying, he only managed to increase his spiritual energy to 57 million spiritual energy points. But now, from the time he approached the sea to the time he actually landed in the sea, it had only been half an hour. The number of his spiritual energy had soared by a large margin, reaching the level of 60 million. The spiritual energy here is obviously not weak. In the sea, not only are there countless fish, but there are also many sea beasts that have evolved into monsters through the spiritual energy. The survival of the fittest is natural selection. Naturally, there is no lack of killing and devouring. Ziyue flew out of the warship, and a divine light flashed in his eyes. He looked through the sea and looked at the bottom of the sea. He really had a feeling that everything in the world was in his eyes. There were too many fish, prawns, turtles, and crabs, and because of the abundant spiritual energy of heaven and earth, most of them had evolved. Even if they did not directly transform into monsters, most of them had mutated. Their strength and size were far greater than before. My spiritual energy has been consumed a lot because of the increase in my realm. Now, whether I want to continue to improve or need to borrow spiritual energy to improve my Tao technique 9 Extinction Divine Sword to perfection, I need a lot of spiritual energy. 60 million spiritual energy points is too little for Maine. It's not safe. Why don't I borrow the help of the countless creatures in the sea to strengthen my soul energy? Ziyue still felt a sense of danger in the depths of his heart. It was not only because he already knew that the 9-star Tao Palace was going to send out the Confucian god Wang Xuezhi to attack him. It was also because of the Heavenly Spirit sect and the True Demon sect. Although he did not know anything about the movements of these two superpowers from Taoist Su Xian, the more it was like this, the more worried he was. No news is the most dangerous. Because no one knows what kind of experts these two superpowers will send out to attack me. Ziyue did not think that the two superpowers would give up on hunting him down. They would only launch a thunderous attack. The longer they waited, the more powerful their forces would be. The sea beasts here are still a little weak. I still need to go deeper. If Ziyue wanted to increase his spiritual energy, he naturally needed to kill more and stronger sea beasts. At most, the sea beasts here were equivalent to the Aperture Awakening realm. It was difficult for him to be satisfied, and so, he quickly rushed out of the sea. Su Tu, how long are we going to keep watch here? On a small island, a group of people occupied a thatched cottage that was large enough for several people to sit cross-legged. The sea breeze blew recklessly, causing the thatched cottage to creak and groan. Within the thatched cottage, a slightly younger cultivator leaned against the left side of the cottage and asked the person who appeared to be the oldest among them. Obviously, it was Su Tu. However, although Su Tu was said to be the oldest, upon closer inspection, he was only around 30 years old. It was only because he had been exposed to the scorching sun for a long time, coupled with the sea breeze blowing, that his face appeared to be dark and dry, giving him an aged appearance. The 4 of them were all Aperture Awakening realm cultivators. The strongest was naturally Su Tu, who was in the late Aperture Awakening realm. The other 3 were in the mid-Aperture Awakening realm, and the other 2 were in the early Aperture Awakening realm. When our observation point is the furthest from the giant whale Immortal City. Once a large number of sea beasts appear, we will need to warn them. If we fail to warn them in time, the losses caused are not something you or I can bear. Therefore, we need someone to keep watch here. You just arrived and do not know. Su Tu and Little Fan have been here for 10 years. Before Su Tu could speak, a cultivator beside him hastily replied. Chapter 710. Su Tu smiled and said, although there are countless sea demons in the boundless ocean, there are 2 primordial spirit realm powerhouses in the giant whale Immortal City. We also have a large defensive formation. Therefore, the larger the sea demon group, the less they dare to attack us. In the past 10 years, what we encountered the most were small groups of sea demons. As long as we can find them in advance and ask for help from the rear, they won't be a big threat. The location of the island they were on was very important. It happened to be at the border between the shallow sea and the deep sea. In the shallow sea, the number and strength of the sea demons were relatively limited. Naturally, it was relatively safe. However, in the deep sea there were many sea demons. Moreover, the deep sea was relatively rich in all kinds of resources. Naturally, it was easy for powerful sea demons and sea demon groups to be born. In order to guard against the attacks of large sea demon groups, they were here to guard against the attacks of large sea demon group. Of course, they were here to warn the sea demons. After the warning, stronger existences would come and attack the sea demons that entered the alert area. For us, the most dangerous ones are the sea demons that are alone. Because unless the strength of a single sea demon is above the god realm, even if we have the sea watching pearl, we won't be able to find them at all. The late-stage enlightening realm cultivator sighed and said, "The sea-watching pearl was a special treasure in the giant whale immortal city used to detect large sea demon group. When the number and strength of sea demons reached a certain level and were within 30 miles of them, the sea-watching pearl would automatically warn them. The sea-watching pearl's warning also had its limitations. If there were only one sea demon that had not reached the god realm and approached them, it would be a great threat to them. Therefore, in addition to the sea-watching pearl, we must also carry the sea-watching mirror with us." As Shinto spoke, he held an oval mirror in his hand. He controlled the flow of spiritual energy and looked at it. In an instant, the originally misty area in the boundless sea became clear. In the depths of the sea beasts that occasionally swam by also appeared in front of him. Since he had taken out the sea-watching mirror, Shinto quickly controlled it and began to observe the surrounding area. Suddenly, he saw a huge sea monster that looked domineering. In addition to 8 huge feet, it was carrying 2 huge pincers in front of it. He immediately shuddered. Oh no! It was a giant crab. Such a physique was at least equivalent to the peak of the aperture opening realm. "Quick, release it, it's too late." As he spoke, he heard a loud bang. The sea surface exploded. Then, a huge sea crab that was at least 3 feet tall rushed onto the island and charged toward them. It was the giant crab. The giant crab was one of the few sea demons that could maintain a strong combat power even when out of the water. It was comparable to the peak of the aperture opening realm and was definitely the biggest threat to them. Puff, puff, puff. Before the giant crab could even stand firm, a series of water spells had already shot out like a stream of light. "Quick, send the signal." As Shinto spoke, he raised a defensive shield and rushed forward while gritting his teeth. A sparkling flying sword quickly slashed forward. Bang, bang, bang. One after another, the water arrows landed on his defensive shield, creating a huge trembling sound. His flying sword slashed forward, but was blocked by the giant crab's 2 huge pincers. Clang! Amidst the trembling sound, the flying sword returned without any effect. Shinto's face was gloomy. The toughest parts of the giant crab were its shell and its 2 giant pincers. Its defensive power was so strong that his flying sword could only leave a white mark on it. Finally, at this time, the rest of the people reacted and took out their respective spiritual weapons, attacking the giant crab with all their might, slowing down its advance. However, in the face of the giant crab's unparalleled defensive power, their attacks were completely useless. Soon, the giant crab endured the attacks and quickly closed in. Occasionally, it would pause for a moment and its yuan qi would fluctuate violently. Then, it would shoot a water arrow. Chi! Boom! The water arrow was extremely powerful and quickly blasted on Shinto's defensive shield, causing the spirit light on his shield to quickly dim and crack. Then, the giant crab stretched out a giant pincer and hit Shinto's defensive shield with irresistible force. Bang! The high-grade spirit weapon defensive shield was quickly shattered. Then, the pincer's strength did not decrease and quickly clamped down. It's over. Su-Tu closed his eyes in despair. The gap between the two sides was too big. Due to the factor of their size, the strength of the sea demon was originally superior to the practitioners of the same realm. Not only was the giant crab huge in size, its strength and realm were also far superior to Su-Tu and the others. Under its powerful attack, it naturally crushed them easily. The outcome seemed to have been predetermined. Puff! At the same time as the strong wind hit, a crisp sound was heard. Following that, Su-Tu felt a sticky, fishy smell on his face and body, causing him to vomit. He hurriedly opened his eyes. Bang! He just happened to see that the incomparably tall and powerful giant crab was completely penetrated from top to bottom. Then, it fell heavily and smashed onto the ground. Dead? He hurriedly raised his head, and happened to see a young man in white floating in midair in the distance. He seemed to be maintaining the posture of pointing a finger and looked extremely relaxed. This young man was naturally Ziyue. He was flying in the sea when he saw the four people on the island from afar. He was about to ask for directions when he saw the giant crab charging out of the sea to ambush them. He casually used a star-shattering finger to help them resolve this crisis and save them. Say, Senior. Su-Tu shuddered. He quickly bowed and said respectfully, "Thank you for saving us, Senior. Otherwise we would have died." "Thank you, Senior. Thank you for saving us, Senior." Behind Chief Su, the other people also bowed and saluted one after another with extremely grateful looks on their faces. This time, it was too sudden and too dangerous. Even though they had sent out the distress signal, they knew it would take at least 30 breaths for the seniors guarding the island to arrive. There was no way they could make it in time. Ziyue had shown up at the right time. "You may rise." Ziyue waved his hand and said calmly, "I have something to ask you too. Are there any immortal cities nearby?" "Senior, there's an immortal city a few hundred li north from here. It's called the Giant Whale Immortal City. We are the city guards of the Giant Whale Immortal City." Su-Tu hurriedly replied respectfully. Chapter 711. Giant Whale Immortal City? I didn't expect them to be so close. Ziyue frowned. He was a little surprised. Then, his gaze fell on the bead in the thatched cottage. He asked curiously, "What's that?" "Senior, that's the ocean-gazing bead. It's an observation-type Dharma treasure. With the help of the ocean-gazing bead, we can see if there are large groups of sea demons nearby or if powerful sea demons are approaching. Of course, if human cultivators approach, the ocean-gazing bead will also sense it and give a warning." As Su-Tu spoke, he carefully glanced at Ziyue. He was extremely shocked. The ocean-gazing bead emitted an extreme red light, which meant that Ziyue's aura was at least in the Golden Core realm. A Golden Core perfected cultivator? He had only seen such a big shot once in the Giant Whale Immortal City. How could he be so lucky to be so close to such a big shot? As for the two Essence Soul Realm Patriarchs in the Giant Whale Immortal City, they had been in seclusion for hundreds of years. The last time they came out was more than 50 years ago. At that time, he hadn't even stepped on the path of cultivation. How big is the detection range of the ocean-gazing bead? Ziyue couldn't help but look interested. He had stepped into the endless sea to hunt sea demons and obtain a large amount of soul energy. The ocean-gazing bead could detect large groups of sea demons nearby and give a warning in advance. It was very useful to him. "It can detect an area of 30 miles around us," Su-Tu said. "Only 30 miles?" Ziyue could not help but reveal a trace of disappointment. If he didn't consider the power of his domain, it could also detect an area of 30 miles away. Although the effect would be 10 times weaker if he went deeper into the sea. Wait. Ziyue suddenly paused and asked, "Does the 30 miles area calculate the distance under the sea?" "Yes." The main purpose of the ocean-gazing bead is to observe the number of sea demons under the sea. Our eyesight is enough to detect them above the sea. Su-Tu answered honestly. They were aperture enlightening realm cultivators after all and had extremely sharp eyesight. Unless there were some special sea demons that could conceal themselves, once a sea demon showed itself, it would be impossible for the sea demon to escape their eyes within a radius of tens of miles. How much is this sea-watching pearl? I'll buy it for you, Ziua said immediately. Senior, if you want it, you can take the ocean-gazing pearl, Su-Tu hurriedly said respectfully. Behind him, several people immediately revealed anxious expressions. The ocean-gazing pearl wasn't their personal possession. It was a rare treasure given to them by the giant whale city's city governor's estate to warn them of sea demons. It was so valuable that the four of them couldn't afford it even if they sold everything they had. However, Su-Tu was unmoved and looked sincere. This sea-gazing pearl is indeed useful to me. But I, Dark North, have never taken advantage of anyone in my life. Take the treasures in this bag of holding as compensation. Ziua was well aware of their little actions. He smiled lightly and casually tossed out a storage pouch. Then, with a wave of his hand, he directly took the ocean-gazing pearl. Then, he turned around and quickly soared into the distance. Su-Tu, why did you give away the ocean-gazing pearl so easily? That belongs to the city governor's estate. Although the city governor's estate must have some in stock, we'll have to buy the ocean-gazing pearl ourselves. One ocean-gazing pearl is worth up to 30,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Even if the four of us give it everything we have, it'll still be difficult. Seeing Ziua leave, the mid-stage aperture enlightening realm cultivator hurriedly spoke with an anxious expression. But soon, when Su-Tu opened the bag of holding and took out the items inside, he immediately shut his mouth, and a look of extreme surprise flashed across his eyes. 4 low-grade flying swords, a jade slip that records the specific locations of 1,296 acupoints, a divine ability inheritance called the Great Strength Seal, and a water spirit technique that can reach the peak of the god realm. Seeing these treasures, the 4 people's faces were filled with shock. They were extremely happy. The value of any one of these treasures was no less than that of the ocean-gazing pearl. With so many treasures together, not to mention one ocean-gazing pearl, even if there were 5 or 10 of them, they would definitely be able to exchange for it. After all, although the ocean-gazing pearl was magical, it did not have any effect on the cultivator's strength. At most, it could give an early warning. In fact, a distance of 30 miles was not very useful for sea beasts whose strength had reached the god realm. However, the 4 low-grade flying swords could directly increase their strength. The 1,296 acupoints could also allow them to break through the limits of their original cultivation technique, ignite more acupoints, and increase their potential. One must know that when Ziua was in the aperture enlightening realm, he had spent a lot of energy searching for as many acupoints as possible. He had almost visited many immortal cultivation sects in the ancient barren region. As for the divine ability inheritance and cultivation method inheritance, they were even more moved. Those were also things that could increase their strength. Opportunity, a great opportunity. To them, this was definitely a great opportunity. No one else had any complaints because of this. Instead, they were incomparably grateful. This ocean-gazing pearl, because of my approach, became more dazzling red. Obviously, it's because the spiritual fluctuation it sensed was too strong. Ziua looked at the ocean-gazing pearl in his hand while flying. After all, he was also an advanced third-grade weapon refiner. His eyesight was excellent, and he quickly saw some of the wonders of this treasure. He knew that it relied on the spiritual fluctuation that the cultivator unconsciously emitted to sense. He quickly restrained his aura. When his aura weakened to the level of the god realm, The red light on the ocean-gazing pearl immediately weakened, showing a light red color. And when he completely restrained his aura, it showed a pure blue color, which was similar to the color of the sea. It can only sense the aura of experts above the God realm, but not those below the God realm. It's really a rare treasure, and it's very suitable for me to use. Ziyue was very happy. Up to now, the amount of spiritual energy he needed to increase his strength was very large. Naturally, ordinary sea demons could not satisfy him. For example, the giant crab that he killed earlier, which was at the peak of the aperture in Lightning Realm, only gave him tens of thousands of spiritual energy points at most, which was a drop in the bucket and meaningless. Only sea demons of the God realm or even the Golden Core realm, after killing them, would give him more spiritual energy and make him feel happy. And this ocean-gazing pearl happened to be able to sense sea demons above the God realm, which was more suitable for him. Next, I'll enter the giant whale immortal city and find out which area has more sea demons. Ziyue put away the ocean-gazing pearl, then looked in the direction of the giant whale immortal city. Chapter 7:12. Half an hour later, Ziyue's figure appeared in a huge immortal city. Giant Whale Immortal City. The entire Giant Whale Immortal City was huge. It occupied a larger area than the Piercing Cloud Immortal City of Piercing Cloud Mountain Range and the Star Source Immortal City of Gusha Mountain Range. Perhaps it was because they were on a huge island that could be attacked by sea demons at any time, but the aura of the formation that enveloped the entire Great Whale Immortal City was extremely powerful. It was almost on par with the defensive formations of some top immortal sections. Even late-stage primordial soul realm cultivators would be in danger of dying if they entered. Ziyue walked through the bustling stream of people that moved about ceaselessly. Some of them seemed to be in a hurry, some of them weren't in a hurry, and some of them weren't in a hurry. At some corners of the streets, there were even sounds of people hawking their wares, and they were selling various medicinal pills, spirit talismans, and other things. And perhaps because the land was different, the customs here were very different from the people of Piercing Cloud Mountain Range and Gusha Mountain Range. He could not help but feel that it was an eye-opener. Big Tao Business Alliance? Suddenly, Ziyue's eyes flickered as he saw a huge building in the distance. The Big Tao Business Alliance was one of the superforces that was not inferior to the 9-Star Tao Palace, Heavenly Spirit Sect, Myriad Phenomenon Sect, and Green Xian Mountain. Its power was on the same level as the 9-Star Tao Palace and spanned across many domains. However, this was his first time seeing the Big Tao Business Alliance's building symbol. It was so huge and majestic, with so many people coming and going, he was even more surprised. After hesitating for a while, he could not help but step in. Soon, a cultivator who looked like an attendant came up to him respectfully. "Immortal Elder, please come in, please come in." The attendants of the Big Tao Business Alliance were all dressed neatly and had clean and beautiful faces. They were young, but all of them were at least 80% of Qi refinement. Although she could not tell Ziyue's exact strength, she could tell from his clothes and aura that he was definitely not ordinary. Therefore, she was very respectful on the surface. "Immortal Elder, what do you need?" she asked. "Just looking around. What do you have here?" Ziyue said casually. "In terms of resources and treasures, our Grand Tao Business Alliance can be said to be the best in the entire astral boundary. However, in the Giant Whale Immortal City, our Great Tao Business Alliance definitely has everything you can buy in other shops. We also have everything you can't find in other places. Even if we don't have a stockpile, with the help of the Great Tao Business Alliance, as long as you name it and can afford it, we can get it for you." When your attendant saw this, his spirits were lifted and he hurriedly explained. Ziyue looked around. Spirit pills, spirit talismans, magical items, spirit materials, natural treasures, jade slips. A dazzling array of treasures was laid out on the counter, making it clear that this shop was many times more abundant than any other shop he had ever seen. It also added a sense of grandeur. He had only seen such magnanimity in his previous life, when the country was peaceful and the people were at peace. In this dangerous world of immortal spells, many shops wished they could use great arrays to seal and protect their treasures. Just this little difference between the two was huge. Of course, our Grand Tao Business Alliance is well known throughout the astral boundary, the attendant said confidently. Ziyue nodded. He didn't think the attendant was being overbearing. In the entire astral boundary, the Grand Tao Business Alliance was widely acknowledged to have the most treasures. Not only did the immortal sects need to rely on the Grand Tao Business Alliance to gather resources, but even the 9-star Tao Palace, Azure Mystic Mountain, Heavenly Spirit Sect, Myriad Sect, and other superpowers had worked closely with them. For example, Ziyue had asked Taoist Su Xian to gather the materials needed to refine the Daluo armor. At least 3 of them had been gathered with the help of the Grand Tao Business Alliance. Give me a map of the area around the giant whale immortal city. I need a detailed list of the surrounding factions and the locations of the sea monster tribes. Also, do you have a map of the astral boundary? Give me one as well. After some thought, Ziyue said. Senior, I'll be the one to receive you. Just when the attendant was about to reply, an old man approached carefully. He then looked at Ziyue respectfully and said, Hello, Senior. I'm the manager of the Great Tao Business Alliance here, Qian-san. Let me introduce you. Steward Qian. Yes. The attendant was startled when he saw this. He hurriedly responded respectfully and retreated carefully. As she retreated, she looked at Ziyue in shock. One had to know that Steward Qian held an extremely high position in the Grand Tao Business Alliance. The last person he had personally received seemed to be True Lord Gu of the City Lord Manor. True Lord Gu was a Golden Core realm expert and ranked among the top 10 in the Giant Whale Immortal City in terms of strength and status. Could this young man be a true lord as well? Sure. Ziyue glanced at the attendant. A mid-divinity immortal spell realm wasn't considered weak. The attendant had obviously sensed his extraordinary aura and deliberately came to receive him. Senior, we naturally have the sea region map that you need. Not only does it indicate the islands near the giant whale immortal city and the sea demon forces entrenched in the sea region, but it also indicates their strength and danger levels. However, we only have a relatively simple map of the astral realm. As for the relatively detailed introduction of the forces and danger levels, we don't have any records. Of course, if you need, we can also apply to the higher-ups for secondment from other divisions. However, the price will be relatively high. The steward calmed himself down and replied. As he spoke, he invited Yi Futian to a quiet room and instructed someone to serve him immortal tea. How long will it take? Ziyue found a seat and sat down. With a flip of his hand, he took out a jade slip and said, And the materials listed here, can you see if you can gather them here? The jade slip in his hand recorded the treasures and materials needed for the cultivation of the great Tao Dharma form. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of borrowing the power of Mount Qingxian to gather the materials for the great Tao Dharma form. However, after thinking about it, he finally hesitated. Previously, he had already borrowed the power of Mount Qingxian to gather the materials for the cultivation of the 9 Extinction Divine Sword. If he borrowed the power of Mount Qingxian to gather the materials for the great Tao Dharma form, it would be equivalent to many of his techniques. There were almost no secrets in Mount Qingxian. Even if the other party couldn't know the progress of his cultivation, they would definitely know the Tao techniques that he cultivated. If they became enemies in the future, or if someone in Mount Qingxian leaked his techniques, he would be in a very passive situation. Therefore, he wanted to borrow the power of the Grand Tao Business Alliance to gather the materials for his great Tao Dharma form. Chapter 713. If the Great Tao Business Alliance doesn't have any treasures in stock in the Giant Whale Immortal City, we'll borrow them from the neighboring branches. Generally speaking, if the nearest New Moon Immortal City has them, we'll be able to return in 10 days or so. If we send a message in advance, we'll be able to get them in 3 to 5 days. However, if we're separated by a few immortal cities, we'll need 10 or even 20 days. Of course, the exact time is also related to the value of the treasures you're purchasing. If the value of the treasures is too high, the Great Tao Business Alliance will send experts to escort them. Some immortal cities will even have super long-distance transportation formations between each other, so the speed will be even faster. Naturally, you'll need less time to get the treasures. A detailed map of the astral plane is usually worth around 10,000 upper-grade spirit stones. It'll definitely be delivered to you in less than a month. As Steward Zhao spoke, he respectfully took Ziyue's jade slip and scanned it with his consciousness. Then, he was shocked. The number of treasures recorded in the jade slip was not a lot, but each of them was shockingly valuable. He only needed to do a quick calculation to know that the total value of this transaction was more than 200,000 upper-grade spirit stones. You want all of these? After a while, he looked at Ziyue in surprise. That's right. Is there a problem? Ziyue smiled faintly. No problem. It's just that we'll need some time to gather some materials. However, because the treasures you're purchasing this time are extremely valuable, even if we can't gather them in the Giant Whale Immortal City, we'll be able to get them from other branches. We'll be able to get them in about 10 days. Steward Zhao said quickly. 10 days. Ziyue frowned. He knew that the Great Tao Business Alliance had countless treasures and resources, and that any treasure could be obtained as long as one was willing to pay the price. However, this was only a branch after all. The materials he needed to cultivate the Great Tao Dharma would naturally be difficult to gather with just one branch. Therefore, he had already expected this. After thinking about it, he agreed and asked, "How much are these materials and the map worth?" 230,000 high-grade spirit stones. Manager Zhao took a deep breath and continued, "If Senior is sure that you need it, we will immediately begin to prepare it for you. 10 days later, you can use our exclusive transaction certificate to collect it. By the way, Senior, do you have the trading token of our Great Tao Business Alliance? If you have a trading token, you can use it to obtain a certain discount. Furthermore, you can also waive the deposit required for the purchase of treasures." No. Ziyue shook his head. This was the first time he had stepped into the Great Tao Business Alliance, so he naturally did not have any trading tokens. "Then I can help you get a trading token. Every time you trade, your points will be recorded in the book. Since one high-grade spirit stone was worth 1 point, 230,000 high-grade spirit stones were 230,000 points. Once you accumulated 100,000 points, you would be able to enjoy a 5% discount every time you made a transaction in the Great Tao Business Alliance. If you accumulated 1 million points, you would be able to enjoy a 10% discount. If it reaches 10 million, not only will the Grand Tao Business Alliance be notified every time we hold a super-large auction, you can also use the token to be protected by the Grand Tao Business Alliance. Even if you become the enemy of the world, the Grand Tao Business Alliance will be able to protect you. Furthermore, when some immortal abodes or mystic realms are opened, you can also use this token to obtain a place to enter and exit." Steward Zhao said confidently. "Oh." Ziyue was slightly taken aback and revealed a hint of surprise. Immortal abodes opened? Mystic realms opened? Obviously, there were many secrets in the immortal technique world that he did not know. However, it was normal when he thought about it. Although his strength had increased now, his understanding of the many secrets of the astral realm was naturally not as good as the elders of some top sections. This was actually the reason why he wanted to buy a map of the astral realm. He needed to understand more about this world. As far as he knew, Only the Great Tao Business Alliance had a treasure like the map of the astral realm. As for the other forces, although they might also have it, they did not dare to sell it publicly because of the Great Tao Business Alliance. Then help me get one. Also, can you buy some treasures here? Therefore, he did not refuse. In addition, considering that he did not have enough upper-grade spirit stones, he also planned to dispose of some of his extra spoils of war. As he spoke, he handed over a storage pouch. Of course. Steward Zhao's eyes lit up and he hurriedly said excitedly. An hour later, Ziyue walked out of the Great Tao Business Alliance. I've already obtained the sea map. However, the map of the astral realm and the many materials needed to cultivate the Great Tao Dharma form can only be obtained after 10 days. Ziyue pondered silently. Then I'll stay in the giant whale immortal city for 10 days. During this time, I can go into seclusion and cultivate the 9 extinction divine sword technique. Although his current situation could not be considered very safe, with his concealment methods, he believed that it would not be difficult for him to hide from the experts of the 9-star Tao Palace and the Heavenly Spirit sect for a period of time. Even if they could track his general location through some mysterious means, it would not be so easy to truly find him. Therefore, with a turn of his body, he arrived at a restaurant. Solitary Immortal Abode. Ziyue entered a huge cultivation courtyard and was very satisfied with the environment. He did not linger too long in the outside world and went straight to the secret cultivation room. Sitting cross-legged on the stream, Ziyue did not immediately enter cultivation. Instead, he flipped his hand and a mirror-like disc appeared in his palm. This disc was specially made by the Great Tao Business Alliance and was a map of the sea within 10,000 miles of the giant whale immortal city. With a sweep of his consciousness, Ziyue entered the map. In an instant, the scene inside appeared in front of his eyes as if it had been revealed to him down to the smallest detail. It is indeed exquisitely made and can be freely scaled up. When expanded to the limit, it feels as if I'm there and can see many of the sea scenes. Ziyue's interest was greatly piqued. He could indeed feel some of the intricacies of the map. Then, he shifted his gaze to the many islands and the various forces of the sea demon clans in the surrounding sea. There are so many. Just in the surrounding 3,000 miles, there are no less than 500 sea demon factions. When expanded to 10,000 miles, there are more than 10,000 of them. Moreover, there are as many as 5 super-large sea demon factions, each of which has an existence comparable to the primordial spirit realm. Ziyue could not help but be moved. Chapter 7:14. Even though he'd expected that there would definitely be countless terrifying and powerful existences in the distant sea region. But now, looking at the sea map, he finally understood the tip of the iceberg. It was indeed the tip of the iceberg. The endless seas were vast and boundless. Although the 10,000 miles around the giant whale immortal city was vast and boundless, it was not worth mentioning when compared to the entire endless seas. However, there were already so many powerful sea demons in this vicinity. What about the wider and deeper regions? Would there be beings comparable to the peak of the primordial spirit realm, or even mighty figures of the immortal Tao, just like in the immortal Tao world? The 5 super-large sea demon factions are the Spirit Turtle Clan, the Giant Whale Clan, the Thousand Fish Clan, the Bone Kuan Clan, and the Black Flood Dragon Clan. Although the Black Flood Dragon Clan is the smallest, with only a few dozen of them, they have many vassal factions. There are at least 3 large sea demon factions around the Black Flood Dragon Clan that serve them. The Thousand Fish Clan was the largest in number. This was a force formed by tens of thousands of fish and sea demons. Although their individual strength was not strong, when they joined forces to form the Thousand Fish Formation, their lethality was extremely high. However, the greatest threat to the human race is the Giant Whale Clan and the Bone Kuan Clan. These two sea demon factions are also the ones that many cultivators in the giant whale immortal city are most wary of. It is very dangerous to encounter these two factions in the sea. Baizua looked at the map of the sea. He didn't expect that other than the dangerous areas, there were also some introductions of the various clans and forces. Even if he didn't deliberately go deep, he still understood many secrets that ordinary cultivators didn't know. It made him feel that it was worth it. No matter which of the 5 sea demon factions it is, if I hunt freely, it can greatly increase my soul energy. It can satisfy my needs to improve my strength and Tao technique. However, the risks are also very high. If I am surrounded, I will be in deep danger. Therefore, I have to be careful, Ziwa thought. His gaze gradually fell on a place on the sea map, and a thoughtful look appeared on his face. Half an hour later, Ziwa put away the sea map. With a flip of his hand, he took out a jade bottle and opened it. Strands of 9 extinction divine aura gushed out. Start cultivating. Right now, my 9 extinction godly swords cultivation progress has already reached 27% of the uninitiated level. I will strive to officially master this Tao technique within these 10 days. Ziwa circulated the cultivation method of the 9 extinction divine sword, absorbing the strands of 9 extinction divine aura with all his might. As his cultivation progress increased, the efficiency of absorbing and transforming the 9 extinction holy aura increased as well. Until then, he could already absorb 10 strands of 9 extinction divine aura into his body without any discomfort. Chi strands of 9 extinction godly aura entered his body and were transformed by the supreme primordial Tao power of the supreme primordial Tao power in his body. It was quickly refined into a special 9 extinction godly sword power. Then, under his control, it quickly condensed into a special Tao technique seed that was completely formed from the shape of a sword. Although the appearance of the Tao technique seed looked a little illusory and was not solid, it was like smoke that would dissipate with a gust of wind. However, in reality, although the sword shadow was illusory, it was as stable as a rock. Under Ziwa's supreme primordial Tao power's pressure, it became even more solid, and there was a majestic and sharp aura faintly being emitted. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, Ziwa continued to cultivate. Bottle after bottle of 9 extinction godly aura was absorbed and transformed into his body. The Tao technique seed of the 9 extinction godly sword in his body became more solid. And the cultivation progress shown on his stats panel was also increasing. 35%, 40%, 45% every day, he could feel his improvement. Although his real combat power did not increase, Ziwa was still looking forward to it. That was because he knew that all the hard work in the early stages was to master the 9 extinction godly sword. Once he reached the entry level of the Tao technique, he could use the attribute panel to directly upgrade it to full mastery. The power of a Tao technique at perfection could be seen from the metamagnet divine light. As a sword immortal type offensive Tao technique, the 9 extinction godly sword would be a cut above the metamagnet divine light in the future. Coupled with his natal treasure, it would be even more powerful. He was very much looking forward to the day when the 9 extinction godly sword reached perfection. While Ziwa was in seclusion, a piece of news spread rapidly among the cultivators in the Great Whale Immortal City. The atmosphere in the city is getting more and more strange. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are more and more merchant ships entering and leaving the city from inland and other islands. Countless supplies are being shipped in. Moreover, the Azure Sea Sect, Myriad Mystery Sect, Chiu Feng Ling, and other major factions have sent experts secretly to the city. That's not all. I've heard that Elder City Lord Hua, who hasn't shown his face in nearly 30 years, has secretly come out of seclusion. What about the one from Middle Cloud Island? There's no news yet, but I've heard that Middle Cloud Island's security has tightened. Also, I don't know if you've noticed. Isn't it a little too peaceful for the islands in the sea recently? There hasn't been any news of sea monsters attacking our islands in nearly 3 months. News after news and the reactions of the major factions seemed to prove something. There was something fishy going on when things were out of the ordinary. The cultivators who'd been in a daze immediately came to their senses. Which immortal cultivator wasn't a giant among men? Those who could become experts had complex thoughts and could see the bigger picture from the smallest details. They knew very well what this meant. It looks like the Great Whale Immortal City, which has been peaceful for 50 years, is about to experience another wave. After a long while, an old cultivator sighed with emotion. His weathered eyes seemed to be recounting the tragedy and splendor of the battle between human cultivators and sea monsters 50 years ago. A great war is about to break out. I wonder how many cultivators are going to participate in it this time? How many experts will fall in this battle? Someone else spoke up with a hint of worry in their voice. However, more cultivators were quickly weighing the pros and cons after guessing the impending battle. Some of the more cautious ones immediately packed up their valuables and boarded warships that night to head inland. Of course, there were also those who discovered the opportunity and secretly gathered information about it. They actively purchased many defensive treasures in case of emergency. Cultivators were no different from mortals in all sorts of ways. Chapter 7:15 Giant Whale Immortal City, City Lord Manor. A group of cultivators was gathered there. Other than Giant Whale City's new city lord, Hua Fengyu, even the previous city lord, Hua Dingshan, was present. Hua Fengyu was a middle-aged cultivator with a handsome face, like a middle-aged scholar. He was at the peak of the Golden Core realm. Although he hadn't been conferred the title of king, he was one of the few known to be able to rival a king. As for City Lord Hua Dingshan, he looked old, but he was a true cultivator who'd passed the lightning tribulation and reached the nascent spirit realm. He held an important position in Giant Whale Immortal City. With him around, Giant Whale Immortal City was as stable as Mount Tai. In addition, the patriarchs of the various cultivation clans and factions of the Great Whale Immortal City were also present. Everyone, I'm sure most of you have already guessed that there's been a lot of activity among the 5 major clans. It's rare for all 5 sea monster clans to simultaneously take a defensive stance against our Giant Whale Immortal City. Hua Fengyu, the city lord of Giant Whale Immortal City, was the first to speak. The outside world is abuzz with the news that the sea demons are going to fight us. We've heard about it as well. However, it's different this time. In the past, only the Giant Whale clan and the Bone Kuan clan were hostile to us human cultivators and frequently attacked us. However, the other 3 clans were much more restrained. Although there were small skirmishes, there weren't any major battles. However, this time, all 5 clans are preparing for battle. That's unusual. Wu Ting, the Wu clan's patriarch, said solemnly. That's right. Any one of the 5 sea monster clans is no weaker than our Giant Whale City. If they join forces, they'll be able to drown our Giant Whale Immortal City with their countless sea demons. If it weren't for the fact that they're at odds with each other and don't dare to attack us with their full strength, we wouldn't have been able to gain a foothold here. However, now that the 5 clans have joined forces, the other cultivator, Lu Yin, also revealed a worried expression. This time, it can indeed be considered a great crisis. However, we have a much deeper understanding of the movements of the 5 sea demons than you do. I discovered that the 5 sea demon clans were acting in unison, but they didn't necessarily want to fight us. There's another reason. Hua Fengyu smiled and said, What reason? Everyone's expression changed. Do you know the Dragon Palace? Hua Fengyu said. Dragon Palace? What? Some of the cultivators were puzzled. However, those who knew the news of Dragon Palace were shocked. That's right, Dragon Palace. I think all of you should know that there is a huge trench in the middle of the 5 sea demon clans. That trench was no more than 300 miles long, but it was tens of thousands of meters deep. We usually call it the Netherworld Trench, but among the sea demons, it's called the True Dragon Trench. According to what we know, there is a secret place in the depths of the True Dragon Ravine. It is one of the entrances to the Dragon Palace. Although we don't know if it's true or not, we did check the ancient records and found that in the early days of the Endless Sea Realm, the True Dragon Clan existed. The True Dragon Clan was one of the top clans in the ancient times. According to the ancient records, every true dragon divine beast possessed the strength of the primordial soul realm when they reached adulthood. With the advantage of their bloodline, as long as they cultivated a little harder and cultivated for a little longer, it would be extremely easy for them to step into the legendary Immortal Path realm above the primordial soul realm. The Dragon Palace is the residence of the True Dragon Clan. Hua Fengyu paused for a moment before continuing. Of course, although the Dragon Palace really did exist, it is actually the entrance of the True Dragon Palace. We can't be sure if the True Dragon Ravine is really the entrance to the Dragon Palace, or if the Dragon Palace is really inside. Therefore, we have to be careful when the 5 sea demon clans make a move together. But what if the incident in the Dragon Palace is true? Wu Ting couldn't help but ask. If it's true, we can't let it go. The Dragon Palace is the residence of the True Dragon. Everyone knows that the True Dragon Clan loves to collect treasures. No matter what, we have to check it out. Moreover, even if the 5 sea demon clans have deep enmity with each other, they will always be enemies with us humans. Once they enter the Dragon Palace and obtain the treasures, their strength will increase greatly. It will be extremely disadvantageous for our great whale immortal city. Before Hua Fengyu could reply, Hua Dingshan, who had been silent all this while, spoke up with a determined expression. As he spoke, his aura faintly revealed a trace of sharpness. That's right. This is why we've gathered you all here. This time, even if the war doesn't happen, we have to be prepared for it. In addition, we have to pay close attention to the movements of the various sea demon clans. Once we confirm that the sea demon clans' powerhouses have disappeared, we have to take the initiative to attack and prepare for battle. Hua Fengyu said. But we can't be sure when the Dragon Palace will open. If we rashly enter the True Dragon Ravine, we might fall into a trap. In that place, our strength is far inferior to the sea demon clans. Moreover, we'll be isolated and without help. It's extremely dangerous. Someone hurriedly asked. Naturally, we won't do anything we're not confident in. We have our own information channels and can find out their movements. As for our strength, as Hua Fengyu was speaking, he suddenly felt his father, Hua Dingshan, standing beside him. His face was filled with astonishment at first, before a smile blossomed on his face as he said, "Welcome, Senior Mo Fan. Pardon me for not going out to meet you." Saying this, Hua Dingshan's figure moved and rushed out of the main hall of the City Lord's mansion to greet a young Taoist who was slowly walking toward them from the void. The young Taoist revealed a faint smile, but there was a hint of arrogance in the depths of his eyes. Even though he didn't reveal his aura, when he got close, the void couldn't help but wrinkle. From the faint ripples that spread out, one could see how unusual he was. When the cultivators saw Hua Dingshan, who was in the early stage of the primordial soul realm, and their respectful expressions, they were shocked. At the same time, they also concluded that the newcomer was a primordial soul realm powerhouse. Furthermore, his strength might be much stronger than the City Lord's. Mid-stage primordial soul realm? Late-stage primordial soul realm? Wait, Senior Mo Fan? Could this person be the true supremacy Mo Fan, who was skilled in both sword and palm techniques, and who had once slaughtered 100,000 demons by himself? If it was really him, then it was very normal for the City Lord to have such an expression. This was because this was indeed a peerless powerhouse. a true cultivator with strength at the peak of the intermediate stage of the primordial soul realm. Chapter 7:16. Furthermore, not only was true supremacy Mo Fan powerful and had a world-shaking battle record, but his background was also extraordinary. He was the junior brother of the peak master of the Heavenly Spirit sect, the second most powerful person in the Heavenly Spirit sect. He was enough to be ranked in the top 10 in the entire Heavenly Spirit sect. Therefore, after guessing the identity of the person who had come, many cultivators revealed a look of realization on their faces. Then, they couldn't help but show respect on their faces. They were even a little excited. If true supremacy Mo Fan of the Heavenly Spirit sect participated in this trip to the Dragon Palace, then their chances would be even greater. Although all cultivators had the idea of monopolizing the benefits, they knew better that if they wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth from the 5 great sea monster clans, they would need to have tyrannical strength. Just them alone was far from enough. After 10 days of cultivation, I still haven't completely mastered the 9 extinction godly sword technique. However, the progress of my cultivation has increased greatly. Although I haven't truly mastered it, I'm already at 99% of the uninitiated level. I'm only a little bit away from officially mastering it. I just need to touch something and I'll be able to directly master it. Zeus slowly opened his eyes, and a trace of satisfaction appeared on his face. Although he hadn't mastered the 9 extinction godly sword technique, he was only 1 step away. Another thing worth mentioning was that after he felt that the progress of the 9 extinction divine sword was slowing down, he did not stay idle. Not only did he study the Great Path Dharma form in detail, as long as he had the materials, he would be able to cultivate it. He also began to cultivate the Creation Mysterious Classic. After all, he had the foundation of refining and was an advanced 3rd-grade blacksmith. He had a lot of experience in the cultivation of refining, so his cultivation progress was very fast. In just a short period of time, he had already raised the cultivation progress of the Creation Mysterious Classic from nothing to 53% of the uninitiated level. Perhaps in a few days, he would be able to officially master it and use his soul energy to raise it. Everything is going on in an orderly manner. If there wasn't someone chasing after me, then everything would be perfect. Zeu's eyes darkened slightly. In his heart, he was a person who yearned for peace and freedom and didn't like killing. However, there were always some people and some things that forced him to raise his butcher's knife. Only after a long while did he shift his thoughts away from this aspect. Then, he stood up, and without staying in this cultivation courtyard for long, he directly walked out. Just now, the Great Tao Business Alliance had sent him a message. The map of the astral plane and many materials for cultivating the Dharma form that he had ordered had been delivered, and he needed to collect them. It just so happened that his cultivation of the 9 extinction sacred sword had reached a bottleneck. Naturally, he turned his attention to the Great Path Celestial Appearance. Once he mastered this Tao technique, his strength would increase even more than the 9 extinction godly sword. After all, he already had the primary magnetic divine light by his side. The power of the 9 extinction sword technique might be stronger when it was fully cultivated, but there was a limit to how strong it could be. Naturally, it was not as good as a supportive Tao technique like the Great Path Dharma form, which could increase his strength in all aspects. After leaving the cultivation courtyard, Zeu quickly stepped onto the street. As a cultivator, he could clearly sense that there was something unusual about the giant whale immortal city from the changes in the expressions of the surrounding cultivators. Something big seems to have happened recently? Zeu was puzzled. His consciousness moved and spread out slightly. With his current immortal spell realm, it was already very easy for him to gather some information. Some small isolation formations were completely useless against his divine sense. Very quickly, a look of understanding flashed across his eyes. The 5 great sea demon clans have joined forces and are about to go to war with the giant whale Immortal City? Old Hua City Lord has come out of seclusion and is urgently discussing countermeasures with various powerhouses? Azure Sea Sect, 10,000 Mystery Sect, Chiu Fengling, and other major Immortal Technique factions have all sent their elite powerhouses into the city? Middle Cloud Island Lord Wan Zhongyun has appeared in the Immortal City? It seems that a mysterious primordial spirit realm powerhouse has also appeared? As the news gathered, Ziyue's eyes flashed with a strange look. After arriving in the giant whale Immortal City, he naturally had some understanding of the strength of the powerhouses in the Immortal City. There were 2 primordial spirit realm powerhouses in the giant whale Immortal City. Other than Old Hua City Lord Hua Dingshan, the other was Middle Cloud Island Lord Wan Zhongyun. Wan Zhongyun's Immortal Technique realm was even higher than Old Hua City Lord Hua Dingshan's, having reached the mid-primordial spirit realm. It was only because Hua Dingshan possessed the giant whale Immortal City's cornerstone treasure, the whale-cleaving sword, that he was able to secure the position of City Lord. Otherwise, the position of City Lord would have changed hands 800 years ago. I just don't know who that mysterious primordial spirit realm powerhouse is, Ziyue muttered, a look of contemplation on his face. In the eyes of ordinary people, a storm was brewing in the giant whale Immortal City, and a great battle was about to break out. Therefore, it was very normal for a mysterious powerhouse to arrive. However, he had a feeling in his heart. This mysterious powerhouse was very likely to be here for him. Immortal Technique cultivators had sharp senses. Even if he couldn't be sure, he was 80% sure. It seems that someone has already arrived in the vicinity while I've been here, and is already in the giant whale Immortal City. I just don't know if it's Confucian Wang Xuezhi of the 9-Star Dao Palace, or the powerhouses of the Celestial Spirit Sect and the True Demon Sect. Or could it be that the powerhouses of the 3 major forces have already arrived? Ziyue's eyes were cold. His aura changed, and he retracted his aura to the extreme, reaching a state where it seemed both real and illusory. For ordinary cultivators, even if they saw him, they would completely forget his appearance as long as they looked away. Even if they scanned with their divine sense, they would only feel that there was a person in the position he was occupying. However, they would not know who this person was or what was so special about him. It was very easy to overlook. Then, he took another step forward. Soon, the Great Tao Business Alliance appeared in front of him again. Within the Great Tao Business Alliance, Steward Zhao was already waiting for him at the door. He quickly welcomed him into a secret room. "Senior, these are the treasures you traded last time. They're all here. Please take a look and count them." Head Steward Zhao served the spirit tea and respectfully handed over a storage pouch. Ziyue reached out and took it. He scanned it with his consciousness. Indeed, in the storage bag, besides the map of the astral realm, there were all the materials needed to cultivate the great Tao Dharma form. He immediately showed a satisfied look and nodded. "That's right. As expected of the Great Tao Business Alliance. Not only do you have sufficient materials, but the quality is also good. Senior, as long as you're satisfied." Steward Zhao's face immediately broke into a smile when he saw this. He seemed to be extremely happy. Chapter 717. Now that the deal is done, I shall take my leave. Bai Ziyue did not take it to heart and stood up as he spoke. "Senior, wait." Steward Zhao was slightly startled and hesitated. After a while, he continued, "Senior, have you heard about the sea demons attacking the city recently? The outside world is very noisy, of course I have heard about it." Bai Ziyue furrowed his brows and said, "Senior, do you know that the sea demons are acting strangely because of a secret realm in the depths of the True Dragon Ravine, which is the center of the 5 great sea demons? Steward Zhao asked. Due to the need to keep it a secret, he did not reveal that the secret realm was the Dragon Palace. I have not heard of that. Ziyue shook his head. He had gathered a lot of information with his divine sense. However, information about the secret realm and the Dragon Palace was still a secret in the entire Giant Whale Immortal City. Only the top experts of the Giant Whale Immortal City, the cultivators above the Golden Core realm, knew about it. Naturally, he did not know. This may be a crisis for the entire Giant Whale Immortal City, but it's an opportunity for powerhouses like you, Senior. The secret realm is an opportunity. Even primordial spirit realm experts would go crazy over this opportunity. Due to the superior status of the Great Tao Business Alliance, the Giant Whale Immortal City revealed the news about the secret realm to us, giving us a chance to participate. Therefore, the Great Tao Business Alliance would like to invite you to participate in the planning of the treasures in the secret realm. Manager Zhao looked at Bai Ziyue and paused for a moment before continuing. Everyone knows that the Great Tao Business Alliance is very wealthy and generous when it comes to bestowing treasures. As long as you are willing to help, we will not disappoint you. What do you think? Explore the secret realm? Bai Ziyue mumbled to himself. He then shook his head and said, Cultivator, I appreciate your kind intentions. However, I have important matters to attend to, so I can only say that it is a pity. Although he was very confident in his strength, he knew that it was not good for him to show too much in his current situation. Therefore, although he was curious about the mystic realm and knew that there must be a lot of good stuff in it since it could tempt the experts of the Great Tao Business Alliance, he didn't want to complicate matters. If that's the case, I won't force you. Seeing this, Manager Zhao could only sigh regretfully. Then, he casually said, Recently, countless powerhouses have gathered near the Giant Whale Immortal City. Not only true Mo fan of the Celestial Spirit Sect, but even Confucian god Wang Xuezhi of the 9-star Tao Palace was a guest on Cloud Island. That's right, it's said that there are also demonic Tao experts secretly infiltrating. Therefore, I hope that fellow Taoist will be very careful when you travel. Thank you for telling me. Ziyue paused and gave the other party a deep look. Then, he turned around and left. Sir, why do you want me to say this? After Bai Ziyue left, Steward Zhao immediately entered a secret room at the side and said respectfully, Sir, I'm sorry. In this secret room sat a middle-aged cultivator. His figure was slightly plump, and his eyes seemed to be overlapping. It was actually a rare double pupil. Double pupil cultivators were rare in the immortal spell world and had a special bloodline. Once they cultivated and reached the god realm, it was very easy for them to awaken the divine eyes among their innate abilities. Their potential and strength were very shocking. Although this middle-aged cultivator's immortal spell realm was only in the late-stage Golden Core realm, his eyes carried a special light that made people not dare to look at him directly. He was very extraordinary. It's just a good karma. This person is no ordinary person. He was crowned king with the strength of an early-stage Golden Core realm, and he could go against the odds and kill immortals when he was in the mid-stage Golden Core realm. Now, he's only in the late-stage Golden Core realm, but he's probably a threat to many veteran primordial spirit realm powerhouses. His appearance made many old fellows in the Business Alliance uneasy. If he doesn't die within 100 years, he might be the next Sun Batong. The middle-aged cultivator smiled and said, Palace Lord Sun Batong? Head Steward Zhao was shocked. When Sun Batong was at the peak of the Golden Core realm, he really managed to kill an immortal. Compared to this North Nether King, he is slightly inferior. Of course, the current Sun Batong is very powerful. When he was at the mid-stage Primordial Soul Realm, he was able to fight against the peak Primordial Soul Realm Mountain Master. When he was at the late-stage Primordial Soul Realm, he could compete with the 9 Great Extremities Realm Expert. Now that he has reached the peak Primordial Soul Realm, It is said that he has the strength to fight against a mighty figure of the immortal Tao. This North Nether King is still far from reaching Sun Buodong's level. Not to mention, it was hard to say whether he would be able to survive this pursuit. Which of the 10 super forces is easy to deal with? If he really provokes them, the Extremities Realm experts will personally take action. How can he be allowed to slowly grow? The middle-aged cultivator shook his head and smiled. That's true. How many geniuses are there in the immortal spell world? After countless years, there are still people who are more monstrous than him. But how many of them can truly reach the primordial soul realm and climb to the Extremities realm? Especially this North Nether King. He has too many enemies and is proud of himself. He is unwilling to condescend to a major force. If he had the protection of a force, would it be so difficult? Supervisor Zhao could not help but nod. You think too much. The more he is protected by a major force, the faster he will die. None of the major forces would have seen the existence of such an extraordinary genius, who has successfully reached the primordial soul realm. The 9-star Tao Palace and Qingxian Mountain have plenty of ways to kill such a genius. The middle-aged cultivator shook his head and said, I am only setting up a preemptive strike. What if he really grows? As he said that, he shook his head and laughed. Then, his figure turned illusory and disappeared on the spot. Obviously, Supervisor Zhao of the Great Tao Business Alliance, or the person behind him, has guessed my identity. Stepping out of the Great Tao Business Alliance, Ziyue's face showed a hint of uncertainty. This was definitely not good news for him. However, after thinking about it, he felt relieved. The Great Tao Business Alliance was one of the top immortal spell forces in the world. It was not hard to imagine that they would guess his identity through various signs. He would never underestimate the power of the 10 major immortal spell forces. Not to mention that they had actually come into contact with him. From what they told me about the 9-star Tao Palace's Wang Shuiji, the celestial spirit sect's Fan, and the infiltration of demon Tao experts, they should not have any ill intentions towards me. It seems like they are deliberately reminding me. Ziyue quickly came to this conclusion. He felt slightly relieved. If it was not necessary, he really did not want to provoke another major force. This was especially true for organizations like the Grand Tao Business Alliance, which was even more powerful than the 9-star Tao Palace. Chapter 718. Although the Grand Tao Business Alliance had a rather loose structure, at least in terms of cohesion, it was far inferior to Qingxian Mountain and the 9-star Tao Palace. Compared to the Celestial Spirit Sect and the Myriad Phenomenon Sect, it was naturally inferior. Even so, the Grand Tao Business Alliance was still ranked in the top 3 of the top 10 superforces, firmly suppressing the 9-star Tao Palace, which was also ranked in the top 3. In the world of immortal spells, strength was king. But with great wealth, one could also become divine. However, the 9-star Tao Palace's Wang Shuiji, the Celestial Spirit Sect's Fan, and the True Demon Sect have also sent experts here. It seems that during the time I was here, the 3 major forces used their own methods to roughly spy on my location and came here to pursue me. Ziyue pondered, a sense of urgency rising in his heart. Although his current strength was not weak, it would still be difficult for him to face Wang Shuiji of the 9-star Tao Palace, let alone True Venerate Fan. Although he had never seen True Venerate Fan before, he knew that True Venerate Fan was no weaker than the Confucian god Wang Shui. In addition, he came from the Celestial Spirit Sect, which had a deep foundation, and might have some trump cards. As for the True Demon Sect, even if he did not know who had come, he was sure that they were not weak. I have to go out to sea as soon as possible to hunt the sea demons. Only then can the quantity of my spiritual energy rapidly increase. Only then can I quickly raise my strength to the peak of the Golden Core realm, and improve the 9 extinction divine sword and Tao manifestation as quickly as possible. Only then will I have enough strength to face the upcoming challenges and resolve this crisis. Ziyue made up his mind and did not hesitate, nor did he need to pack anything. He directly headed out of the city. Perhaps because the giant whale immortal city was isolated overseas, one had to go out of the city gates to enter and exit. The forbidden space formation in the void was extremely strong, and even golden core cultivators would be suppressed and could only fly at low speeds. In order to not attract attention, Ziyue naturally went in and out of the city gates like most cultivators. There were city guards at the city gates, and almost at all times, there were god-level city guards guarding the city to prevent chaos. At the top of the city gates, there was a demon-revealing mirror. Under the illumination of the demon-revealing mirror, any demon that approached would emit a warning light. Ziyue approached the entrance of the city. Before he could step into the long path leading to the city gate, he suddenly felt several divine senses sweeping past him. At the same time, 3 deity realm cultivators released their divine senses to investigate. Almost every 10 breaths, a divine sense would sweep over. The frequency was extremely high. So strict. Ziyue's heart skipped a beat. He instinctively cast the shadow gravity field and concealed his aura, pretending to be a normal enlightened aperture realm cultivator. With his means, he naturally dodged it easily without being discovered at all. 1, 2, 3 After 3 waves of divine consciousness, after a period of 60 breaths, a divine sense that was a lot stronger than the previous 3 scanned the area once again. A golden core true monarch. Was this the strength of the divine sense of a golden core true monarch? Ziyue frowned slightly. If it was just to guard against the sea monsters, there would be no need for such tight security. The demon-revealing mirror and the divine sense of a deity realm cultivator were enough to eliminate most of the sea monsters below the golden core realm and even the golden core realm. Could there be a primordial soul realm sea monster sneaking in? In the giant whale immortal city, no primordial soul realm sea monster would dare to take the risk, unless they were very powerful. Could it be? Is there another purpose behind all of this? Ziyue suddenly seemed to have thought of something. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Fortunately, his shadow gravity field had already reached the perfect realm. Unless a primordial soul realm cultivator was investigating in person, it would be impossible to see through him. Everything went smoothly. He walked out of the immortal city directly. Then, he withdrew his body and completely disappeared on the spot. A day later, Ziyue's figure appeared in a vast sea. There were no clouds for thousands of miles around. There were only a few islands around. At a glance, it was a sea of blue. According to the sea map, this should be the periphery of the giant whale clan's territory. It's the territory of the sea serpent clan, a subsidiary sea monster of the giant whale clan. Ziyue silently compared the sea map and immediately came to a conclusion. The sea serpent clan is considered a large clan among the many sea monsters. Although there is no primordial soul realm sea serpent king, there are 7 or 8 golden core realm sea monsters. The number of other clans is also very shocking. Let's try it out on them first. Although Ziyue was confident in fighting in the sea, he had to think more about it. After all, fighting in such an area was naturally disadvantageous to the human cultivators. On the other hand, those sea monsters could perfectly exert their strength. Thinking of this, he did not enter the sea immediately. Instead, he flipped his hand and took out a blue bead. It was the sea viewing bead. As soon as the sea viewing bead was taken out, a faint red light appeared. Obviously, there was a group of sea monsters gathering in the area ahead. There might be a god realm sea monster among them. Controlling the sea viewing bead to suspend around him, Ziyue took the opportunity to enter the sea. Boom! There was a splash of water. Ziyue opened the gravity shadow realm and forced the sea water to open naturally. It's quite easy. But the deeper I go, the greater the pressure in the sea. Ziwa thought in his heart and did not care. With his strength, even if he went thousands of miles deep under the sea, he could still maintain a certain combat strength. Then, he spread out his divine sense and followed the direction of the sea-viewing bead. Soon, he found a group of sea serpent demons patrolling the sea in the distance. Occasionally, when they saw fish swimming by, they would quickly rush up and devour them directly. There were more than 10 sea serpent demons in this group. Except for one who had reached the early stage of the God realm, the rest were equivalent to the middle stage of the Enlightenment realm. Each of them was 30 to 40 feet long. When they coiled together, they looked extremely ferocious. Ziwa quickly approached them. With a thought, a flying sword rushed out. Swoosh, the flying sword swam in the sea like a golden light, emitting an extremely cold sword chi. Puff, puff, puff. The sea serpent demons, whether it was the early stage of the God realm or the middle stage of the Enlightenment realm, were all killed in an instant, even if they were hundreds of feet away from each other. The flying sword did not even really get close to them. Just a gust of sword chi's cold sword chi eliminated all their vital signs. This sword was the 9 extinction sword technique, which he had practiced for more than 10 days and had almost reached the beginner level. Although he had not officially reached the beginner level of the 9 extinction sword technique, with his strength, it was easy to deal with this group of sea serpent demons who were at most in the God realm. Chapter 719. The aura of the sword light alone was enough to annihilate the sea monsters below the gold core realm. Even the sea monsters in the early and middle stages of the gold core realm could hardly resist the sword of the 9 extinction holy sword. My soul energy has only increased by a few 100,000. Continue. Ziwa's figure flashed, and he swiftly passed by these sea snake demons and continued forward. With the sea-watching pearl, he could sense the sea monsters whose strength had reached the divine realm within dozens of miles around him. Then, he quickly approached and attacked with the 9 extinction holy sword. Once the 9 extinction holy sword was used, no matter how powerful the sea snake monsters were, no matter how large the sea snake monsters were, he only needed to use one sword move. He only needed one sword move. He killed all of them with one sword move. As time went by, Ziwa's figure gradually went deeper. He also gradually felt that the number and strength of the sea snake monsters he encountered had increased correspondingly compared to the beginning. Guessing that he might be close to the central area of the sea snake monsters, Ziwa did not stop at all. The 9 extinction holy sword was used one after another. The carefree and relaxed feeling, as well as the influence of the sword chi in the sea, the obstacles and the influence of the sword chi, were all perceived by his divine consciousness. He also took this opportunity to search for the source and found his own shortcomings. Then, he improved little by little. The 9 extinction holy sword was naturally much cruder than the Tao arts at the level of perfection. Ziwa's eyesight was very good, and it was constantly improving as he used it again and again. Soon. It won't take long. After a few more times, my 9 extinction holy sword will be at the entry level. Ziwa had a strong premonition, and he gradually became excited. Even if he used the 9 extinction holy sword, the consumption of his divine consciousness was much more than the ordinary divine consciousness. With the density of his purple extreme elixir essence, he could only use it 7 or 8 times in a row. But he did not care. Another 9 extinction godly sword was unleashed in the form of a stream of light. Puff, puff, puff. In front of him, dozens of sea snakes formed a battle formation and rushed toward him. The sea serpent demon in the lead was a sea serpent great demon that was obviously much larger in size. Its strength had reached the peak of the divine realm. There were dozens of deity realm sea serpents around them. However, in the face of Ziyue's resplendent sword, the combined strength of the group of demons was no weaker than that of a mid-golden core stage great demon. In the blink of an eye, their vitality was extinguished. Even their demonic bodies were torn apart by the incomparably sharp sword light. With a sizzling sound, they were all annihilated and turned into ashes. It's done. I've finally mastered the 9 Extinction Sword technique. Entering the 9 Extinction Divine Sword means that the shackles that restricted my growth are gone. I can also use my soul power to improve this Taoist technique. Ziyue did not care about the results in front of him at all. Instead, he was ecstatic when he sensed that he had learned the basics of Tao technique. He hurriedly looked at the attribute panel and saw the words, 9 Extinction Sword Technique, on the row of Tao technique. My soul power has also increased from more than 60 million to 107 million now. Finally, it has broken through 100 million again. Immediately after, Ziyue also noticed the number of his soul power. Although the 100 million soul power could not directly improve his Tao technique 9 Extinction Divine Light to perfection, it could also improve his 9 Extinction Divine Sword technique from entry level to small success. However, after thinking about it, he did not directly improve it. 100 million points of soul power was not much to him at all. Even if he improved the 9 Extinction Divine Sword technique to small success, it would not improve his strength much. It was better to save his soul power for a rainy day. In the sea, in a huge karst cave, countless sea serpent demons were entrenched here. In the center of the karst cave, there was a huge sea serpent demon that was hundreds of feet long and dozens of feet thick. Every time it breathed, the seawater would surge violently, accompanied by intense toxins. The corrosive seawater and the walls of the karst cave became a wretched green. This sea serpent demon was the king of all the sea serpent demons, the sea serpent demon King Liu at the peak of the golden core stage. Not good, not good, not good. There is a human cultivator outside our snake palace who is wantonly slaughtering our tribe. Now, half of our tribe has already died in his hand. Moreover, he is now rushing straight in the direction of our snake palace. Suddenly, a sea serpent demon quickly approached from afar and said in a panic, "A human cultivator? Are you sure there is only one person? How is his strength?" Demon King Liu suddenly opened his vertical eye and looked over coldly. When he met the Demon King's gaze, his heart trembled and he hurriedly said, "Yes, there is only one person. I don't know his exact strength, but he is at least at the early stage of the golden core stage. His sword technique is extraordinary, and no sea serpent demon can block his sword." "How arrogant! My king, how about I go and meet him?" Hearing this, a sea serpent demon with an extraordinary aura shouted angrily and said, This sea serpent demon king was a sea serpent demon whose strength had reached the mid-stage of the golden core stage. Commander Li He? With your strength, it is not difficult to deal with an early-stage golden core cultivator. Go. The sea serpent demon king did not mind and nodded casually. Therefore, the sea serpent demon king excitedly rushed out of the snake palace. Not long after, another sea serpent demon rushed over. My king, this is bad. Commander Li He is dead. He was killed by that human cultivator in one strike. What? The surrounding sea serpents were shocked. Some of them were even agitated. Immediately after, another sea serpent demon volunteered and rushed out, shouting, My king, I will meet him. This sea serpent demon was already at the late stage of the golden core stage. He was also the second king of the sea serpent demon tribe. With the advantage of a sea serpent demon's size and the fact that they were in the sea, he even dared to fight a peak golden core expert directly. Facing the great whale immortal city's city lord Huafengyu, he was not afraid at all. Even if he could not defeat him, he could still exchange a few blows. Alright, just to be safe, bring some other tribes to help. The sea serpent demon king nodded again. But soon, another sea serpent demon rushed over. Its voice was filled with panic as it stuttered, Great king dead, who? Who is dead? The sea serpent demon king suddenly stood up, and as he shook, huge waves rolled up in the sea. Second king is dead. He was killed by that human cultivator in one strike. More than 1,000 sea serpents are also dead. Only a few managed to escape. The sea serpent demon king panicked. What? The sea serpent demon king was shocked, and his vertical eyes widened to the extreme. He finally started to panic. Could it be that a nascent soul true cultivator has made his move? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.